All right. So, happy Halloween, everybody. And let's get the chat started. So, this chat's just to celebrate 50K subscribers. So, thank you to everyone who has subscribed to the channel. 50K subs. That's obviously amazing. And yeah, just have a bit of Halloween fun as well. I'll be talking about some absolutely fucking terrible horror movies and Halloween movies and a couple of good ones as well. So we'll have a bit of fun with that. But it is an open chat. So if you want to chat, ask questions, comments, whatever, throw it in the chat and I'll do my best to respond to it. All right. So I'll just start with a few of the comments here. We've got, hopefully you can hear me all right. Let me just check the audio settings. Yeah, we're looking good. Okay. So JJ Hayden says, Hail Despot and congrats. John Carpenter's The Thing is my favorite Halloween horror movie and probably my fave movie of all time. Even though I'm not that into horror, it always remained in my top 3 favorites since I was aged 8. Yeah, The Thing's brilliant. And I think when you watch the old Thing and you compare it with the crappy remakes that they've tried, you realize, and I was thinking this today, just watching, I was watching Nightmare on Elm Street, watching it back. Those old practical effects, they're so much better than the CGI shit that they have nowadays. And I know it is a bit of a cliche to say that, but when you haven't watched a movie from, say, the 80s in a while, and you just go back and you watch even those low budget movies like the first Nightmare on Elm Street, it's so much better than the modern CGI shite that you get, especially in horror movies. It looks fantastic. And you notice big differences, like it's well lit. For example, in Nightmare on Elm Street, there's a scene where the main girl is on the phone and Freddy has called her, despite the fact the phone is off the hook. And she picks it up and his tongue comes out of the phone. And it looks awesome. It's a practical effect, but it looks really awesome. So, and that's what's really great about The Thing. The practical effects in it are excellent. And it's not supposed to look that realistic. You know, we've learned this from video games. Photorealism isn't really what people want. They want, in the case of video games, they want fun stuff that looks like a video game. And with movies, we do want a bit of theater, which I think that's part of why practical effects look much better. It's theatrical. All right. So yeah, thanks, JJ Hayden. And The Thing is one of the great movies. I also, JJ Hayden says, I also think highly of The Exorcist 1 to 3 and the original Ju-on. I was never a big fan of The Exorcist. I do like the original Exorcist, but was never that big into it. Rob Neath says, how is his head shinier? Yeah, my wife did the makeup. She did a great job, didn't she? I love it. I remind myself of that guy from The Crow. I can't remember the name of the character, but I think I look a bit like him. All right, let's see. So Uncle Fester has AIDS. That's a good one. All right. Hail Despot, love your channel, mate, said Agent Smith. Thanks very much, man. I'm glad you're enjoying the channel. And JM, dude, you're a fucking legend. Just want to say that. Thanks very much, JM. I appreciate it. Rayman Rohan, Brett Cooper is going to end Disney hard. We'll see. I mean, the main thing is that it's a good movie, right? As long as the Daily Wire can give us a good Snow White movie, that's great. Because as far as I'm aware, we've never had a good live action Snow White adaptation. And that's the most important thing here. You know, fuck Disney. Who cares about Disney? Let's just enjoy a good movie and forget about Disney. You know, just forget that Disney are doing their stupid Snow White, which they've even had to push back a year. Obviously, the actor strike is part of the reason for that, although I think that's honestly a cop out. Really, we all know why they pushed it back. But yeah, we'll see what the Daily Wire can come up with for Snow White. Like, I mean, the fact that you can actually look at that movie and think, well, this might be good. Already, it's better than Disney because Disney are not capable of making anything that's good anymore. If you want nightmares, check out the leaked Snow White photo. Yeah, that would give you nightmares. What do you think about Freddy versus Jason? I think I saw that. Like, Jesus, when did that come out? Let me just check. I think I saw that when I was a teenager, and I thought it was absolutely terrible. Have a look here. Yeah, that came out in 2003. I would have been 14, and I think me and my brothers watched the pirated version of it, and it was bloody awful. So Zachem says the first Nightmare is genuinely great movie, one of the best and scariest horror movies. Yeah, I was thinking about that. Like, what makes Nightmare on Elm Street such a great movie? Because I was watching Slender Man, and I'm going to be getting on to. I've got 12 reasons Slender Man is such an awful horror movie, and it is. It's an absolutely terrible film. It is one of the worst horror movies I've ever seen, and it's probably the second worst movie I've seen this year. The worst movie is She Said. Now, neither of those were made this year, just the movies that I've watched this year. Both almost unwatchably bad. But Slender Man is one of the worst horror movies I've ever seen. And I was watching it and thinking, well, why is it so bad? What are they doing that's wrong? And I came up with a list of 12 things. And a lot of them contrast with something like Nightmare on Elm Street, which does those things correctly. So you can definitely contrast those two. And also, Slender Man rips off a lot of Nightmare on Elm Street, although it does it quite vaguely because the creators of Slender Man are so incompetent. They want to rip off Nightmare on Elm Street, but they're so incompetent. They're such idiots. They can't even do that properly. All right. Rob Neath says Disney already ended Disney law. That's true. I mean, Disney were the architects of their own destruction, and that they are no longer capable of doing anything good. Darren Coyle, the thing is too scary. I can't sleep well for days after watching it. A true horror masterpiece. I mean, the body horror aspect of it is brilliant, but there's also the paranoia aspect. Who can you trust and who can you not trust? Who's real and who's not? It's brilliant. It's such a psychologically deep movie. Okay, so the Blob remake. I haven't seen the Blob remake or any trailers for it. Despot be rocking that Skeletor look. Yeah, man, I'm looking very Skeletor. I think I match up well with the skeleton in the background. The only good horror movie I know is Barbie. There is some truly horrifying stuff in Barbie, isn't there? I mean, if ever there was a movie to expose feminism, it's Barbie, right? My God, celebrating this horrifying matriarchy and the oppression of half the population. My God. Holy shit, I just opened this up and shit myself when I saw you, says Phoebe Dinsmore. Well, I'm very glad to hear that, Phoebe Dinsmore. Yeah, I'm... All right. Darren Coyle, Des, are you and your wife going trick-or-treating with your son? We did it. We went trick-or-treating last night. So we went to a park and they had all the wee trick-or-treat stalls set up and the kids were running around. We had three big bags of chocolate with us that we'd bought at the supermarket, and we ran out of that pretty quickly because the kids were all coming over to get it. So we went trick-or-treating and we had a great time, and our son loved it. It was wonderful. All right. We were dressed up as Curious George, so I was dressed up as the man with the yellow hat, and our son was George. All right, so did you watch the Chucky series? No, I've never watched Chucky. I really don't. I just can't get into those stupid scary doll or haunted doll or doll comes to life and starts killing people movies because I could never take them seriously. I always just thought they were too ridiculous to be genuinely horrifying. Some dude says, good name, by the way, some dude. First time I seen your face, got a little shock, lol. Yeah, I usually look slightly better than this, but got up on the wrong side of the bed today. All right. Is there a single good versus movie? I'm not sure what that means. And Ghost Spider says, what do you think of Alien? I mean, Alien, it's one of the great masterpieces, isn't it? It's just a superb movie. I mean, is it a horror movie? I suppose it is. It's a claustrophobic horror in space. I think that was part of the concept behind it, that he was going to do a horror movie in space. And yeah, Alien is brilliant movie. I don't have anything particularly original to say about Alien. I just agree with the general consensus that it's one of the great movies. Disney Snow White still not using real dwarfs, says X-Plotter. Yeah, God knows what's going to happen with that mess. I mean, because they've postponed it and now they're doing reshoots, probably it looks like they're it's going to end up costing them a lot of money. I hope that it does, because I absolutely despise Disney's remakes, and I even did a video about why they need to die. If you want a clearly laid out video essay about what is so wrong with these bloody movies and why they need to go away, you can watch that video. All right, Pietro Smoozy says, hello, Despot. I love your content and your costume. Well, thank you very much, Pietro. Hold on. I've got a Teddy O gave me $10. So thank you very much, Teddy O. I really appreciate that, man. And Melodic Method says, happy Halloween, Despot and chat. I am listening while playing Astroneer. Cheers. All right. Well, happy Halloween, Melodic Method, and enjoy Astroneer. All right. So LSR1888 says, you see Slaughterhouse? No, I haven't seen that. And Amelia Bodilla, Tim Burton, yay or nay? Very good question. And I have a very clear answer to that. Tim Burton's last really good movie was Sleepy Hollow, which he made in 1999. Tim Burton was a genius in the 90s when he was making Edward Scissorhands and Ed Wood and the Batman movies and um, then Sleepy Hollow. Those were all incredible movies. Like the work that he did in the 90s alone cements his place in cinema history. Beetlejuice, although I think Beetlejuice might have been 1989. Absolutely incredible stuff, Tim Burton. And then he just got so shit. He started doing this really dull, boring, repetitive, placid junk like his Charlie and the Chocolate Factory movie. It's crap. There's not, and I'll tell you what's wrong with it. It's not that it's really bad. It's not really bad. It's just so mediocre from start to finish. It never really gets above that mediocre level. And he did what was that musical he did with Johnny Depp and Helena Bonham Carter? God, I can't remember it, but I can't remember what it was called. But Sweeney Todd. He did Sweeney Todd. Thought it was very dull, dragged a lot. He actually did the first Disney live action remake, which was Alice in Wonderland, and it's bloody awful. And more recently, he has done Wednesday for Netflix, and I tried to watch it. It was okay. It wasn't good. It wasn't impressive, particularly in any way, but it was fine. Basically, I think that with regard to hold on, I've forgotten his name for some reason. Tim Burton. With regard to Tim Burton, yeah, it's yes in the 90s and pretty much no ever since. He's never made even if you like some of his more recent stuff, he's never done anything anywhere close to as good as Sleepy Hollow since that came out, and that was in 1999. And then he did that Dumbo remake as well, which I have not and never will watch because it looks fucking terrible. All right, so let's move on. Des, what do you think of an alien? So this is Darren Coyle. What do you think of an alien tie-in movie about the infection at Anchoron Colony? I'd call it Hadley's Fall. The infection. I don't know what you mean specifically by the infection. If you mean that the place gets infected with xenomorphs, I mean it's not kind of what they did. That would almost be like a prequel between Alien and Aliens. So how did the colony itself get infected by these xenomorphs, and then you watch the downfall of the colony? That'd be pretty fun. I think a movie like that. Although God knows there's been enough alien movies. Hello, Despot. No need to reply to my comment because it has been said by other people, but I also love your content and your strong and well-formulated opinions. And your costume looks really awesome. All right. Thanks very much, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, Sweeney Todd, somebody said that in the chat. Why are so many... So Goran says, why are so many movies trying to be woke when it usually only ends up killing their chances of being a box office success? There are a few reasons for it. There's no one big reason. ESG is one. So companies want to create movies that pander to a particular protected minority, as they are officially referred to in the United Kingdom. Don't know. I mean, and then just a minority in the United States, because that will help shore up their ESG score. So companies will be willing to lose money on this as long as their ESG is kept in order. A good example of it would be Bros, which I did a video on. The company that made Bros, was that Universal? Let me just quickly check. Bros movie. I think it was Universal, actually. Yeah. So Bros would have been made by Universal Studios so they could keep their ESG score intact. And I don't think that they were under the illusion it was going to make money. They made it just to virtue signal their LGBTQ plus X divided by sign support to their corporate overlords. And it didn't matter to them that they were going to lose money because they would have made that back in ESG, but that they lost way more money than they thought they would. So they spent about 60 million on it, and I think they got 7 million back. So this thing lost over $50 million for them. They would have been prepared probably to take a hit. To take a hit of between 10 and 20 million, something like that. They would not have been prepared for 50 million. It was a much more massive disaster than they had bargained for. But that's one of them. So ESG is one of the reasons. Another one is that the company is obviously filled with activists, and they think that if they're not using their platform as writers or directors or creators to make a statement, then the they're doing something wrong. You know, that they're morally obliged to make a statement with their movies. That's why. That's just what they believe. If they think if they make a movie and there's no politics in it, there's no message, then that's a wasted opportunity. You know, you had a chance to speak out and you didn't speak out. That's their attitude. You know, the silence is violence, as they call it. The Soviet Union had very much the same attitude. If you make art and it is not Soviet art, it is not pushing the message of the proletariat and Marxism, then it's bourgeois. It's very much Marxist thinking, although they wouldn't necessarily think of it like that. They would just think of it as doing the right thing, probably. Happy Halloween. Love your vids. Greetings from Germany. It says LPBFMVBEP. Well, happy Halloween to my German friend. And no, I have not played Dead Space. I play very few video games. I'm playing Dying Light at the minute, which I played before. And I just love running around killing zombies. It's fun. A lot more fun than Spider-Man 2 looks, you know, going around the city and helping gay couples get married and things like that. Okay. Hi, Despot. So, Sepraman says, Hi, Despot. Been enjoying your content when you mentioned the Daily Wire. I was wondering if you're going to criticize crappy conservative movies like God's Not Dead or still make videos about woke stuff. I will make videos. I mean, fundamentally, my channel is a channel about shit media. Let's not lie. Let's not lie about that. So, I do really bad propagandistic advertisements. I do propaganda analysis, and I'll talk about really crappy TV shows and movies as well. I do talk a lot about good stuff, but I will talk about it in contrast to the bad stuff. So talking about a balance of both. Although my next video, I've got a Halloween video coming out on Halloween, and it's not almost all positive. There is a lot of negative there, but most of it is positive. It's kind of a different video for me, so we'll see how that does. But would I criticize crappy Christian movies? To be honest, I probably wouldn't, because I just don't think anyone would care enough to watch the videos, because the Christian movies, no one knows what they are. They have no brand recognition. They have no name recognition. So I don't think I could generate views by criticizing crappy Christian movies. And I agree that most of those Christian propaganda movies are crap. I mean, I am a Christian, but even I'm aware that those movies suck. So I wouldn't. I wouldn't think that people would be interested in hearing about them just because they're not interested in watching them. All right. So Miyagi says, Hello, everyone. I'm a Slav, so I don't know what time it is or if it's Halloween. I guess they don't do in Halloween wherever Miyagi is. I like the movie with Johnny Depp. Sweeney Todd. I mean, it was okay. It was one of Tim Burton's better movies post 2000. It was. He's done some truly terrible stuff, but Sweeney Todd was one of the better ones. But again, I just thought it never was really able to achieve liftoff, that movie. Thought it was very mid the whole way through. Okay, a few more here. We'll do a few. I'll do a few more comments, and then I'll get to my Slender Man comments, because I feel like I've got some interesting thoughts to share on that movie. And even though it's a terrible movie, the lessons we learn from it teach us about really good movies as well. Despot of Antrim, your breakdown of Rings of Power almost made me watch it to root for Sauron, says Red Baron Snoopy. I was rooting for Sauron the whole way through. I wanted him to decapitate Galadriel, and unfortunately he didn't. I mean, Guy Ladriel, excuse me. If you want to use a really scary costume, you should dress as She-Hulk. Yeah, that's not happening. Do you watch South Park? They did a special this week, joining the Pandaverse. They rip into Disney and AI quite nicely. I haven't seen it. I've heard about it, and I've heard that they went after Kathleen Kennedy, but I'm planning to watch it, and I might do a video on it because it would tie in quite nicely with something that I want to do a video on, which is modern tropes that have destroyed modern movies. And one of the big modern tropes, which is absolutely eviscerated modern movies, is obviously race and gender swaps. Although I have addressed that in previous videos. So David, we just had a horror movie extravaganza over here. Event Horizon, great movie. Cabin in the Woods, I've seen it. I can't really remember it. Killer Clowns from Outer Space, I can't remember. I messed up. Well, that sounds like a great time. Hope you enjoyed yourself, man. Infinite Traveler, I've always loved the Alice in Wonderland live action remake. The sequel sucks. I'd say it's the best one they've made. It isn't just a one-on-one copy and paste, but worse. I did see it in the cinema. And I do remember thinking it was good at the time, although my opinion of it has seriously soured since then. I would need to see it again to get a good idea, but I doubt I would like it if I were to watch it again. Okay. So A Nonny Mouse, hello Despot, Australian fan here. Just wanted to apologize for Dan Andrews, who appeared in your Robin with a Y Hood is the worst show of 2023 video regarding housing projects. He's as bad as Trudeau. Yeah, he was a. I don't know who that was. It was some politician in a video I found on YouTube who was promising to tear down these horrifying council flats and rebuild them even better. I just don't know why they would bother. Like, just destroy them, let them go, and it, I'm not going to get into a political debate about state housing, but I'm sure the guy's an arsehole anyway. Stephanie Strange, I love this channel. Good job. Thank you very much, Stephanie. Okay, so a couple more comments, then we'll get on to Slender Man. LSR 1888, it shakes me up how the makers of these movies seem to genuinely believe they're writing heroes when they're obviously the villains. I keep hoping there will be a big reveal that it was all satire. It's interesting, yeah. I did that video. I did a video on female characters in which I kind of made this point. A lot of the female characters you see on screen now are villains, but the writers and the creators of the show think that they're heroes. Perfect example of it is Guy Ladriel from Rings of Power. Guy Ladriel not only is a villain, but she actually has a very clear villain's arc. Her arc is it's the hero's journey inverted. So it's the dark inversion of the hero's journey. That's Galadriel's arc in Rings of Power, whereby you start out with a power and you abuse that power in the search for greater power and you eventually are consumed by evil. That is her arc in Rings of Power. But because the morality of the people writing this shite is so twisted, they perceive that as a heroic arc. It's crazy, and that's not the only example. There's tons of really immoral, villainous characters showing up in movie and TV who are presented as heroes, but who are actually the villains. Another good example of it is Helena Shaw in Indy 5, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. She's a villain character, but she's presented like the creators think she's a hero. Okay, so I'll leave the chat for a little bit and I will go to my Slender Man. So I've got 12 reasons Slender Man is a terrible movie. So this was a movie made in 2018, and I'm going to give you a little bit of background on it here. Okay, so the Slender Man movie was based on a Slender Man uh, meme kind of myth that was going. It was a fan myth that was created online in the 2010s. I think it was created in 2009, and it was going around the internet. And then this happened. So I'm reading from Wikipedia here. On May 31st, 2014, in Waukesha, Wisconsin, United States, two 12-year-old girls, Anissa Weir and Morgan Gazer, lured their friend into a forest and stabbed her 19 times in an attempt to appease the fictional character Slender Man. Leutner crawled to a road where she was found and recovered after 6 days in hospital. So thankfully, she wasn't killed. Weir and Gazer were found not guilty by mental disease or defect and committed to mental health institutions for sentences of 25 years to life and 40 years to life, respectively. Okay, so that was the background of Slenderman of the movie. So they kind of had something. They had this creepy internet myth that had popped up in 2009. The movie was created. The movie was released in 2018, and it was almost universally disliked. Basically, universally disliked. So the Rotten Tomatoes critic score 8%, audience score 16%. It's an absolutely terrible movie, right? Universally disliked, and it wasn't because it was based on an internet myth that turned into a real life stabbing. That wasn't it. It's just that it's an absolutely terrible movie. It's so bad. And when I say it's bad, I don't mean it's bad as in I think it's bad, but there might be some idiots out there who will enjoy it. No, no one could possibly ever enjoy this movie. There is no way anyone would enjoy it. If you enjoy watching shit movies because you like to enjoy them ironically, you like to engage with them ironically, you won't enjoy it. You'll just be bored. No one would like this movie. It's absolutely terrible. So I threw it on and I was watching it on Netflix, but I was thinking to myself, why is this so bad? Because it was almost mind boggling how bad it was. So I actually started thinking about it, and I've got 12 reasons here why it is so bad. So, a little bit of background, first of all, just on the storyline. As simply as I could put it, Slender Man is about a group of girls who watch a forbidden online video, an act which causes an evil monster known as Slender Man to stalk and eventually kidnap them. So that's basically what it's about. Now, the first reason it's terrible is indifference. Fundamentally, you don't give a shit about any of the characters. They are neither likable nor interesting. The girls are all just generic teenage girl. Okay, that is their character type, generic teenage girl. and they're all the same character. Now, I'm really attuned to this because I worked as a teacher for 10 years and I've taught hundreds of teenage girls, and I know all the personality types. The personality types in this movie, in Slender Man, they don't have personalities. They're just generic teenage girl. You don't get any sense of what they're into, or what kind of style they go for, or what their interests are, or just their general personality. Their personalities are so mid and so boring, and they all just kind of meld together into the same character. I can't remember a single name of any of the characters, and I just don't care about any of them. A giant boot could have emerged from the sky and crushed every character in that movie, and I wouldn't have batted an eyelid. I just didn't care. They were terrible characters because they didn't have characters. They were just essentially templates that weren't filled in. Just four teenage girls. The writers seem to think, oh, well, we've got four teenage girls and that's it. That's all we need. No, where's the personality? Where's the character? They didn't have any. They were just so bloody boring. I mean, for example, is maybe you take, so there's four main girls. Maybe one of them is kind of post goth, right? She's going for that whole fashionably unfashionable thing. She's gothing herself up to the 90s because she wants the attention, but she doesn't want people to think she wants attention, kind of thing. Although she wouldn't necessarily phrase it like that. In her mind, that she's just cool. Already we've got a bit of character depth there. And then maybe the second girl is just super boisterous, super fun, loves all the popular stuff, really into Taylor Swift and whatever else the kids are listening to these days. I don't know. I've given up on popular music. And then you've got the third one who is kind of, maybe a little bit crazy and overly aggressive and, sleeps around a bit with the boys, a lot more than what's good for her. And the fourth one can be, the girl next door. She's very studious and she likes to just do her work, but she loves her friends, even though they get her into trouble sometimes. And that'll form a nice group dynamic. But you don't have any of that. You've just got these four fucking boring characters that just are blank nothings. So it's impossible to care about any of them. And if you don't care about the characters, you can't care about anything that happens to them in the movie, and thus you don't engage. It's as simple as that. You compare that to something like Nightmare on Elm Street, and you do care about the characters. Like Johnny Depp's character is a very likable kid in that movie. You're rooting for him, and when he gets pulled into the bed and turned into a giant spurting fountain of blood, it's sad, and you're rooting for the girl at the end, and even the girl who is banging that the bad boy at the start of the movie, even though she's making some bad decisions, she's got a bit of personality, and you don't want Freddy Krueger to kill her. You care about these characters, but and that's really important. But there was just absolutely none of that in Slender Man. So that was reason number one, just total indifference. If you want to make people care about the movie, you got to make them care about the characters, and they just completely failed to do that in Slender Man. All right, so before I get to reason number two, I will just engage with the chat a little bit. All right, so Pietro Smoosey, sorry if I ask about it a lot, but I wanted to know if you would probably do a video about Nimona, which in my opinion was the only good thing coming out on Netflix recently. I honestly don't know what Nimona is. I would say a really good thing that came out on Netflix recently was One Piece, which I think is easily the best TV show of the year, and it's probably the only TV show of the year that I would genuinely recommend to people. So there are other good shows. Beef, I think that was another Netflix show, was good. It did have problems. It was a bit crazy at times and really over the top, but it was good fun. It was funny, and the acting was excellent in Beef. I wouldn't necessarily go out of my way to recommend it, but maybe it's something you could check out and see if you enjoyed the first episode. Another one was The Last of Us, which I thought was a mixed bag. Some of it was excellent, some of it was pretty terrible, but most of it was quite good. But again, I wouldn't necessarily go out of my way to recommend it. One Piece, that's not the case. I would recommend One Piece. So Stephanie Strange, not just views, but I think you're actively helping with your videos. Christian videos are low-hanging fruit because no one watches them anyway. They're influencing people like Hollywood is now. Yeah, the Christian stuff, it's low-hanging fruit, and it's an interesting question. Like, why are Christian filmmakers so shit? Why can't they make good movies? It is an interesting question. I think probably because their focus is they're trying to do two things. They're trying to preach the word of the Lord. They're trying to preach the good word as they see it, and they're trying to make a movie. And the focus really should be on making a really good movie, and the message has to come second. I think the best movies with strong messages, the message is subtextual. It's beneath the surface. It's not shouted in the audience's face, and those are the most effective messages anyway. Look at, I mean, the two greatest pieces of propaganda ever, maybe, are Saving Private Ryan and Top Gun. Those are two movies which promote the idea of militarism and signing up for the army and being a soldier. And, being a soldier makes you a man, but it's never overt. It's subtextual. And that's borne out in the statistics. You look at the Air Force recruitment rate, it went up 400% after Top Gun came out. So the best propaganda, if you want to push a message, it has to be subtextual. You can't be screaming it in people's faces when it comes to movies and shows anyway. So LSR 1888 gave me $4.99. Thank you very much, LSR. Andy just now gave me $2. So thank you very much. Would you ever cover The Room? Best meme movie. I did actually try to watch The Room. So let me get the guy's name right. Johnny Weasel. So I did try to watch The Room. And I'd heard a lot about The Room and I'd seen videos of it. And I watched about 25 minutes of it. And the truth is, it just bored me. I was just very, very bored. And I could understand where people were coming from. I could see why they thought it was so terrible, because it had really weird dubbing. And even the direction that the sound was coming from, the guy would be walking into the middle of the frame and his audio would be coming like far left. It's not only incompetent, it's astounding how incompetent The Room is. And I've seen the rooftop scene, but I'm not big into, meme movies. I can enjoy some movies that are just so astoundingly terrible that it's mind-boggling. Like, for example, the Star Wars Christmas special is something else. Maybe something else. It's mind-bogglingly terrible. The Room honestly just bored me. I'm not even sure it's that bad a movie. It's its own thing, like, really. But I couldn't get past 20, 25 minutes. It was just too boring. It was boring me to death, The Room. So I'll head back to the live chat. Let me scroll down to the bottom here. So Billy Badass, I feel Rambo 3 is the best propagandist film. Rambo, man, I've recently finished a book. It's called The Last Action Heroes, and pretty good book. It's basically just a history of the action period in cinema. So, all the movies by Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Bruce Willis is in there, Jean-Claude Van Damme, he even talks about Jackie Chan's movies, and Stallone as well. Obviously, those are 5 guys that he talks about during this action period. He follows their movies, and so he was talking about the Rambo movies. And I think after Rambo 2, Rambo basically goes on a killing spree and just wipes out several hundred Russians. I think it was Rambo 2. Was that Rambo 2 or Rambo 3? And as a response to this, the Russians made their own propaganda movie, Russian Rambo movie. Hold on, I'll show you it. I'll show you it on the screen here once I pull it up. So Russian Rambo movie. Yeah, here it is. Here it is. I found it. I've been looking for an excuse. I'm so glad that Billy Badass brought this up, because since I read this, I've been looking for an excuse to bring it up. Okay, so let's bring this up here. Let me share this. Give me a second. All right, share screen. Here we go. All right, you should be able to see this now. Right, so this is the detached mission, it's called. Okay. Oh, hold on. I think I accidentally turned that screen share off. Sorry, I'm not very good at screen sharing. Just let me try that again. The detached mission. Okay, here we go. Right, that should be it now. So hopefully you can see it. This is called the detached mission. And this was made in response to Rambo 2. Have they got it in the production? I don't know if... No, it's not. It's not in the history there. But basically, Rambo 2 came out, and Rambo runs around killing tons of Russians. And the Russians were so infuriated by this. I think the Russian ambassador to the UN, or the Russian ambassador to somebody anyway, he got up in the UN and he said that Rambo is American propaganda and it's disgraceful. And this is going against détente, and we can't have this. So the Russians, in response, they made this movie, the Detached Mission. And just look at the poster. You've got basically the Russian Rambo knockoff, and he's standing with his boots on a burning American flag. It's wonderful. Like it's such blatant propaganda. But this was made in response to Rambo 2. And apparently the storyline is something like the United States is about to start a nuclear war with Russia. So they send this guy in and he takes control of their nuclear submarine, and he kills like 400 Americans or something. Hopefully I can watch that movie and maybe I could do a review of it because it looks wonderful. But that was their response to Rambo, the detached mission. Love, just a lovely wee bit of movie trivia. All right, let me stop screen sharing. Okay, here we go. All right. So, have you ever saw the Saw movies? If you did, which one was your favorite? Says Pietro Smoothie. So, the first one is probably my favorite. I really like the first Saw movie. It's a genuinely engaging, fun indie horror movie, and it has a great ending. And the ending really works with the first one because the twist ending is now an expected trope in the Saw movies, and it's a good trope. It's a fun trope. But in the first one, we didn't know that. We didn't know that there was going to be this really cool twist. So that was super effective. And there were also just little things that I liked about the movie. For example, the doctor, he's banging this hot Asian girl. And you can tell before you discover this, you can tell by the way she's looking at him. Okay, he's banging her. And then you find out that he is, and he's cheating on his wife. And just little touches like that I thought were quite nice. The way she's looking at him in some scenes. And that's not necessarily a horror aspect or anything. It's just very good filmmaking. It's basic, but it's good stuff. And the ending is wonderful. The gore is beautiful. It's just a great movie. The first Saw. Now I did see Saw 10, and Saw 10's great. It's probably the best ever 10th installment of a franchise. Okay, I've seen two 10 movies this year. I've seen Saw 10 and I've seen Fast 10, the 10th Fast and Furious movie. And Fast 10 is an absolute calamity of a movie. It is just an avalanche of shite. It is an absolutely terrible movie. Bottom 5 of the year. Absolutely awful. Saw 10 is really good. Now, I will talk about Saw 10. I mean, I sure may as well talk about it now. I don't have that much to say about it because I don't think there's any point in doing non-spoiler reviews of movies. So if I talk about Saw 10, I'm going to be giving things away about it that I don't want to be given away. I don't want to give away. If you haven't seen it and you like horror movies, watch Saw 10. You'll enjoy it. It's a good movie. As I say, I don't think it's as good as Saw 1, but it's fun. It's a lot of fun. And a good Saw spin-off movie is Spiral with Samuel L. Jackson and Chris Rock. They play a father-son. In that movie, a father-son parent. And it's a really good movie, really fun. I thought it was well done. Nice twist at the end. And good acting, well-paced. All the fundamentals are there. Spiral's a pretty good movie too. I like the Saw movies. I mean, some of them are terrible. Some of them are awful. But some of them are great. And 1 in 10 in particular and Spiral are really fun movies. Excuse me. Sorry, just a second. All right. I have to drink through a straw, otherwise I'll be drinking paint. All right. So what do you think about Starship Troopers? Says Casual Debatist. Starship Troopers is a masterpiece. So a lot of people, they look at Starship Troopers and they think, oh, Starship Troopers is corny and it's dumb and it's got, it's ridiculous. It's got these stunning models running around as soldiers. That's the point. It is a satire of military propaganda movies. Okay, your man Verhoeven really knew what he was doing, and he specifically states in interviews about the film and in the audio commentary that he is satirizing military propaganda and military movies. And as far as I'm aware, is it Paul Verhoeven? Is that the name of the director? Moment. Yeah, Paul Verhoeven. So he stated that that it was propaganda, and as far as I'm aware, he actually made propaganda for, I don't know which military it was, like it was the Dutch military, the American military, but he actually made advertisements for the military. So he knew what he was talking about, and you see that a lot. He even parodies that. There's those fun little parodies that are intersected between scenes in Starship Troopers, and he did that as kind of a parody of this stuff he'd done in the past when he was making military recruitment videos and advertisements. So Yeah, Starship Troopers is brilliant. It's a masterpiece. And even aside from all of the satire and the really deep, engaging stuff like that, it's just a great movie. But I'll give you one little example of how clever it is and how satirical it is, and the depth that it goes into. So the subtextual messages of the movie is that the humans aren't the good guys. Neither are the insects. They're basically just two races competing in an existential war, and there are no good guys really. You look at the insects, and it's very obvious from their visual depiction that they're evil. But then you look at the humans, and you see their bug armor. I'll even bring it up here. So, Starship Troopers armor. If you look at their armor, it's a kind of bug armor. It's designed to emulate the. Hold on, let me share the screen here. So here it is. It's designed to emulate the look of a bug. So it's designed after it's modeled after the plate armor that you would see on bugs. And when you look at them, especially when there's a lot of them together, they do kind of look like bugs, and that's very, very deliberate. It's a visual indication that the soldiers and Starship Troopers and the bugs that they're fighting are just. It's not necessarily good versus bad, even though that's how it's presented in the movie on a very surface level. But really, it's just these two races in an existential war. It's not necessarily good versus bad, and that's one of the things I love about the movie. It doesn't go for that really cheesy. Here's the good guys. Here's the bad guys. It's just about an existential war between two species. Wonderful stuff. Love that movie. But Saw 10 better than Jason 10. Jesus Christ, isn't Jason 10 the one where he's in space? My God. Jason 10 is an astoundingly bad, terrible movie. I honestly don't know if it's Jason 10 because it's the 10th Jason movie, the 10th Friday the 13th movie, or if it's supposed to be called Jason X because X sounds cool. I don't know, but I'm just going to call it Jason X, right? Jason X is an absolutely terrible movie. I did watch it as a teenager and I did enjoy it. I thought it was fun, but terrible. I must watch it again to see if it's any good. It's very, very campy. It's a super campy movie, which I think is why it gets away with being so bad. But yeah, I kind of enjoyed it at the time. Not gonna lie, I did enjoy it. Nuclear Bomb, Despot. What do you think about Candyman, the first one? The movie scared. Yeah, it's a scary movie. That is a scary movie. The Candyman, like the actual character, the Candyman, is so creepy. Like that actor, don't know his name, but he did a brilliant job with that character. Super creepy, and yeah, that's a genuinely scary horror movie. Like try watching that movie on your own with the lights out. It's not going to be easy. That is a genuinely scary movie, The Candyman. Such a really creepy movie. It really gets you. So LSR 1888 says Starship Troopers still holds up for me. I remember my ridiculous parents taking us to see it in theaters when I was 8 or 9. Hey, as long as you had a good time, sounds like your parents had pretty good taste in movie. All right, so I'll get back to the comments, but let's go to different. Reason number 2 for why Slender Man is so bad. So no villain motivation. Slender Man is supposed to be a monster, but even a monster needs motivation, some hint as to why it behaves as it does, or the promise that the ultimate goal of the monster will be revealed. None of this is present. So that's the second reason Slender Man is such a bad movie. Slender Man isn't really a villain in it. So Freddy Krueger is a villain. He's a personality. He speaks. Whereas Slender Man isn't. He's basically just a monster in the movie. And even a monster needs some sort of motivation. So if you look at Stranger Things season 2 and 3, which were crap, even they're one of the reasons they were crap is because they didn't have a villain. They decided to go with a monster, which was the Mind Flayer. The Mind Flayer had motivations. The Mind Flayer wanted to. It was basically a giant Borg that wanted to take over everybody's mind and to turn everyone into an army of zombies. So that's what it was. What its ultimate goal was to use everyone and turn them into zombies so that it could transfer itself to the real world and eventually take over. Well, not the real world. The upside down is real, but to take over the our world, right? That's what the Mind Flayer wanted to do. So there was a motivation there. So you could, I mean, those were bad seasons, but they were watchably bad. In Slender Man, we never get any indication as to what exactly Slender Man wants, why he is doing the things he's doing. Like, why is he kidnapping children? Um, where does he come from? What is his ultimate goal? Like anything, like any indicate, give us any sort of motivation. What is going on here? Like Freddy Krueger wants revenge on the children of the parents who burned him alive, burned him to death. What does Slenderman want? There's nothing there. There's absolutely nothing there. The movie basically treats him as a mystery box the whole time because they think that's compelling, and it's not compelling. It's fucking boring. Like, just give us something. Like, explain what your monster wants, or make him a villain and he can explain for himself. Absolutely terrible. Just really, really basic stuff that they got wrong. So, no motivation there for Slenderman himself. All right. So number three was that there were basic questions unanswered. This is obviously related to number two. We learned that Slenderman wants the girls. Yes, we know that. Why does he want them? What does he want to do with them? What even is he? The movie throws a load of shit at the screen and hopes that something sticks, but they have no real idea what he is, right? Even the creators of the movie, they couldn't make up their mind about what Slenderman was. There's one scene where a girl goes into a library and she picks up a book and she's looking through the book and she's trying to find all this information about what is he, what's Slender Man, and oh, maybe he's a demon, or maybe he's this mythical creature, maybe he's this, maybe he's that. And this is all just thrown at the screen in super fast kind of montage, like library research montage. But there's no real indication of what he actually is. The writers, the creators, the director, no one has any idea what this Slenderman monster creature is. And because of it, it's boring, it's dull. Like, if you're going to make a movie about this, then answer these questions. What is he? Where does he come from? What does he want? Why is he doing what he's doing? And why are there people online who are trying to help him acquire victims? None of this is answered. It opens up all of these questions and doesn't answer any of them. Not one. Like, not one. It's such a basic thing that the movie gets wrong. All right, so I'll head back to the chat for a bit here. I loved when in Lando Was Murdered, L3 Waller Bridge gets shredded on the battlefield. The actress is also hot as. Well, she's not my cup of tea, but if you say so. But it was beautiful. That was the one part of Solo that I liked, when that fucking robot got destroyed. I hated that thing. That was really good. They have apparently fired the writers of the Solo TV. They're going to do is it a Solo TV show they're going to do now, or Solo, or not Solo, Lando? So they were going to do a Lando TV show, and now they're going to do a Lando movie. I think that's it. But the writers are, oh God, that guy that played Lando, forgotten his name already, and his brother. So it's gonna be shite. Yeah. All right. So LB, I love you, Despot. Thank you very much, LB. I really appreciate that. Happy Halloween. Let's see, Miyagi. None is a bad film, but it is explained to us what the demon wants to possess, why the demon wants to possess the whole world. Yeah, exactly. I mean, even if The Nun is a bad movie, they're at least answering some basic questions, whereas Slenderman doesn't even do that. It's an astonishingly terrible film. All right, so Fidu SMS. Hi, Despot. Great channel. Greetings from Switzerland. Did you see Pearl 2022? I did not, unfortunately, but thank you very much for your kind comment. All right, Zakum, the monster threat needs enough lore to be scary and, yeah, drive the plot. That's the other thing. Slenderman doesn't have any lore. It starts out with the myth, and you think that it's going to develop that thread into some world building and maybe get a bit of lore behind it, but there's really nothing there at all. If you want to have a monster, you really do need lore to go with that, because the monster can't explain itself. It can't speak. So what do? You have to then have lore, like old books, or some old guy that lives in a cottage in the woods somewhere and says, "Oh, let me tell you about the monster." Something like that. You need some lore. And if you don't have that, it feels very empty. LB was the library montage. It was the library research montage set to Eye of the Tiger. It should have been. It would have made the movie better. Like, the movie can't get any worse. You might as well just throw Eye of the Tiger in there. All right. And Dan Trianon says, I was bored to death in the Solo movie. It was one of those movies I could not stay at the theater once more. Yeah, it's a very boring movie. It's also hideous to look at. It's got this really disgusting, nauseating kind of yellowy filter on it. It's just absolutely horrible to look at. Awful film. All right. Pachuco, this is a pleasant surprise. I'm very pleased to hear it, Pachuco. Warlock X4, love your content. Please keep it coming. Yeah, I've got a comment. I've got a video coming out on Tuesday, so that'll be my Halloween video, and hopefully you enjoy it. Casual debatist, do you think that in the modern era could there be a Mandela catalog movie? What's Mandela catalog? Let me look that up briefly. Mandela catalog. Sorry, man. I don't know what Mandela catalog is. This is the first time I've heard of it. All right. Jerome, 50K, congratulations. Thank you very much. And Paddy Pool FC, did you ever get a chance to see Cannibal Holocaust? People really freaked out about it. No, that's the first time I've heard of Cannibal Holocaust, but I might check that out. Dan Trianon, Solo Movie was actually one of the reasons I fell out of love with cinema. I've got that a lot in my comment sections. I've seen a lot of people commenting on my videos saying things like, I haven't been to the movie theater in years, and they'll mention some movie. Often it's a Star Wars movie. So some of the culprits would be The Force Awakens as one. People said, I went to see that movie, never went to the cinema since. The Last Jedi is another one, and Rise of Skywalker. I've had a lot of comments of people saying, I saw one of those three movies, never went back to the cinema. They were so disgusted by it. What is it that, I mean, Kathleen Kennedy just seems to have this power. She's so terrible that she can actually keep people out of the cinema for years. All right. So heading back to the Slender Man notes. So number 4, this is the fourth reason Slender Man is so terrible. And this was a big one. There are far too many fake out nightmare sequences. It lowers the stakes and it makes real attacks less engaging. So this was basically sequences where the characters are having a nightmare and Slenderman attacks them and they go, ah, and they wake up from their nightmare. And it turns out, oh, it was just a dream, just a nightmare, no big deal. And everybody's fine now. All right. So let's not worry about it. And there are so many of these. Like every character has at least a couple of them in Slender Man, and as a result, when the real attack happens, it's kind of like the boy who cried wolf. You sort of just think, oh well, it's probably maybe it's another nightmare, or maybe we'll at the end everybody's just going to wake up. So even when the real attacks do happen, the stakes have been lowered so much by these constant nightmare fake outs, these bullshit rip-offs, these Nightmare on Elm Street knockoffs. So many of them have occurred by the beginning of the third act that you're completely disengaged. There's just no stakes anymore because no matter what happens, you'd think, oh, it's going to be a nightmare sequence, and that's exactly what happened during the final attacks when Slenderman comes to attack the girls in the end. I was completely disengaged because I thought, oh well, maybe it's a nightmare, and if it's not, I don't care anyway. So that was another one, just too many fake out nightmare sequences, and obviously they were trying to ape Nightmare on Elm Street, where the villain, or in this case, the monster, attacks the victims in their sleep. But it just didn't work because if he's not able to physically harm them in the sleep, then what's the point of it? You're just aping Nightmare on Elm Street, and in the process, you're lowering your own stakes and you're making the movie far less enjoyable. So that just sucked. So Pietro Smoosey says, what are your thoughts about Phoebe Waller-Bridge? I honestly think that she's ass and has not that much talent to be as high on the popularity ladder as she is. She made a show that I've not watched and probably never will watch called Fleabag. As far as I'm aware, it's basically a show for women. Women like it. And that was very successful. So it was critically and commercially very highly regarded when it came out. And as a result of that, she was basically catapulted straight up the ladder into the higher echelons of Hollywood. And she started work straight away on big budget movies. So she went from Fleabag straight into James Bond, Solo, and then Indiana Jones, just on the strength of Fleabag. And it was because she was a woman. It was because here's a woman who is writing and directing her own stuff, and it's critically and commercially successful. So Hollywood snapped her up so that they could, have this woman, this really talented woman who was going to make really great cinema, and she would be their feminist hero, I suppose. That's how they thought of it. So that's basically why she was vaulted up the ladder so fast, because of that. But everything she's done has been terrible. So she was absolutely atrocious in Solo. Her character was awful. L3 was the worst Star Wars character, bar none. Absolutely terrible. Jar Jar Binks all of a sudden doesn't look so bad when you look at L3. Just horrible to watch. Her style of comedy and her shtick that she brought to that movie, it didn't work in the Star Wars universe. Or it was just awful, horrible, current year cringe. Solo already is a more dated movie than the original Star Wars. And L3, Phoebe Waller Bridge is a big part of that because she did this really current day shtick and it was fucking awful to watch. Then she went on to do, she wrote some of the James Bond stuff. I still haven't watched that last James Bond movie. I just can't bring myself to do it. And then Indy 5, which speaks for itself. Like I did a video on it. I don't think I need to tell you how bad she was in that film and how despised that movie was and her role in it. It was just horrible, absolutely horrible. So the less I hear about Phoebe Waller-Bridge, the better. She's bound to fade away eventually. I mean, everything she's done has bombed. Like Solo was a huge bomb. The Indiana Jones 5, huge bomb. So eventually the studios are bound to catch on. Like, look, as much as her wee show Fleabag might have been successful at the time, this woman is not cut out for Hollywood cinema. She should maybe just go back and do her indie TV stuff because she sucks at this. Eventually, the Hollywood studios are bound to catch on. Like, even they must know that the woman is a money pit. But, you know, what do I know? I'm just someone who has common sense, unlike Hollywood studios. LSR 1888. Can you imagine taking one of the most successful franchises ever and your new movies and make people quit going to the movies altogether? Well, exactly. I mean, what Kathleen Kennedy achieved is absolutely astonishing to take the greatest movie franchise of all time, the most successful of all time, and absolutely tank it. It's an astonishing achievement. Casual debatist. Slender Man isn't a very creative monster either. It's not, even if you look at the creature design, and that's another thing I'm going to talk about a bit later, the face is all wrong. So I'll talk about that in a, actually, you know what? Let me just pull it up here. Hold on, I'll get to it. It's buried somewhere in my notes. But basically, he doesn't have a face and he doesn't have a mask. He is neither. And it's just this really dull, blank, boring creature design. It's awful. Pachuco says they overpromote people. Excuse me. They do. I mean, Hollywood obviously overpromotes people that they want to promote. So, for example, why is Hollywood trying to make Rachel Zegler a thing? I mean, seriously, chat, right? Any thoughts? Why is Hollywood trying to make Rachel Zegler a thing? Because she's not a very good actress. She's not particularly good looking. She's a very plain looking girl, at least in my opinion. She has no charisma. She has no charm. She has no screen presence. Why are they trying to make her a thing? I mean, it's not something that I've thought a great deal about. I mean, she's diverse, I guess. She's a Latino. She's not that diverse. It's not like she's a black lesbian. Do you know what I mean? I just don't get it. Sometimes Hollywood just does odd stuff. It picks someone and they try really hard to make that usually woman happen. For example, Disney were just could not let go, especially Lucasfilm. They couldn't let go of that ginger plank of wood, the diversity mascot. They had her as Emphas Nest in Solo. They had her in Willow, and they had her in a couple of other things. And she's absolutely terrible. She's got no talent. She's fucking awful. But Hollywood just can't let her go. It's like just stop trying to make her happen. She's not gonna happen. And it's got to be the same with Rachel Zegler. I mean, will Hollywood pursue that and try to make her happen, or will they just give up on her? Now, my suspicion is that probably they're just going to give up on her because she's so toxic. Like, she is a radioactive leper, right? She will just destroy any franchise that she gets within a mile of. So any intelligent studio director, investor won't want her anywhere near a project. But why would they want her to happen in the first place? It's nuts. So Dan Trianon, can I ask what are your thoughts on my favorite movie, Marie Antoinette? I am sorry for asking again, but I wanted to know if you were aware of that one and other historical dramas. I haven't seen it, so I can't comment on it. Although, I mean, Marie Antoinette she's not an interesting historical figure, but the events that were happening around her were tremendously interesting. Pachuco Zegger, I hate to say it, my son had to watch the musical and she is actually good in it. Well, fair enough. I haven't seen it. I have not seen the Spielberg remake of God, what was it? Was it a Streetcar Named Desire? I'm not sure. But anyway, apparently she was good in it, so there you go. I don't watch musicals. Not my thing. Despot, have you ever seen the movie 30 Days of Darkness, says Comrade Fish? I recently watched it and it's a pretty good thriller. Basically, vampires attack a small Alaska town. That sounds pretty cool. I might check that out. I haven't seen it, but hey, anybody, if you're interested in watching a fun vampire movie, maybe check out 30 Days of Darkness. Might be a fun Halloween movie for you to check out. Zakim, I see it. I hate excessive hallucinations and horror. I stopped reading The Deep by Nick Cutter because of that, and he's a great writer. Yeah, if you push that too much, if there's too many nightmare sequences, too many hallucinatory sequences, it lowers the stakes too much. It's very much a dramatic equivalent of the boy who cried wolf, and you need to just a little bit of it is very good. Or you can go the other extreme, which is Nightmare on Elm Street, whereby they blend reality and nightmare together. So you don't know what is the dreamt reality and what is the real reality. And you look at the last 10 minutes of Nightmare on Elm Street, and it's very difficult to tell what's real and what's not. And is this a dream? If it is a dream, whose dream is it? Was Freddy really defeated at the end, or was he simply was that part of his toying with his victim? Was he just faking out a defeat so that he could toy with his victim a little more and then get her later? It's interesting. He really Wes Craven does a great job at the end of that movie of really mixing it up and making you think about completely confusing the idea between dream, nightmare, and reality. It's wonderful stuff. It's really well done. Like, seriously, watch the last 10 minutes of Nightmare on Elm Street and try to figure out, is it real? Is it a dream? If it is a dream, whose dream is it? It's really, really well done. Wes Craven did a brilliant job of confusing the two. So you've got to either go to that extreme or you've got to do it very, very mildly, like a little bit of nightmare sequence, like The Shining. The Shining is an excellent example of a movie that does nightmare sequences perfectly. A little bit, just a little bit, but not much, because if you do too much, you'll lower the stakes. And yeah, I mean, The Shining is the greatest horror movie of all time, probably. I mean, I haven't seen them all, but it's certainly my favorite, and I think it is the greatest. It's just the layers of depth in that movie are absolutely incredible. Dan Trianon, Rachel Zegler is the reason I am not going to watch the new Hunger Games. I mean, I never thought any of the Hunger Games movies were good anyway. Like, I've even read the first two books. They're shite. They're full of plot holes, and really obvious plot holes too. The movies were kind of fun, especially the first one. I thought was kind of fun, but nah, I just thought it was ridiculous and dumb, and the geopolitics of it didn't make any sense at all. The world building is very poor. I just could not get into it at all. It's crap. But yeah, apparently a lot of people are not going to see the new Hunger Games movie because of Rachel Zegler, and I'll be really interested to see that, like the Rachel Zegler effect. Let's see if it tanks the Hunger Games movie, maybe. All right. So Rob Neath, she's a harmless suck up that toes the message. Look at her interview with Gal Gadot. She looks to Gal for approval on what she's saying, and Gal nods. She's a suck up. Well, yeah. I mean, if the establishment messaging was, oh Jesus, I don't know. Let's exterminate the Canadians. If all of a sudden tomorrow the regime decided that the main thing wasn't pushing LGBT alphabet messaging and trans the kids and that's and war. No, that's not the thing anymore. The current thing is now let's exterminate Canada. Let's just put all the Canadians in camps and keep them there until they're not there anymore. She would toe that line. She would start talking about how wonderful it is that the Canadians are being rounded up and how much she hates them. It's absolutely true. She's a mindless moron when you look at her interviews. And I know she's very young, and it's not nice to be very harsh against people who are super young and still finding their way in the world. And your brain's not even fully developed until you're 25. But she is a particularly obnoxious product of the American education system. And like I say, it's not entirely her fault. She is the product of a failed system, an American education system that is a disgrace, and which has failed not just her, but an entire generation, and probably at this stage, several generations of people. All right. Okay. I'll scroll through the comments here. There's a lot of comments I wasn't able to get to, so sorry if I wasn't able to get to your comment. Rachel Zegler, so pseudo tablehead. Rachel Zegler saw that Brie Larson did her career and said, "Hold my beer." She said, "Hold my Bud Light." That's what she said. Christ, I mean, Rachel Zegler's. I mean, Brie Larson. when she went off on that wee rant about 40-year-old white men. Oh god, that was awful. That was awful. I'm not even sure Rachel Zegler's done anything as bad as that. Billy Badass, yes, you would. Dan Trianon, I love your video on the Apple movie. I was not aware of how bad it was. It was just beyond abysmal. Well, I mean, Dan Trianon, make sure you vote in the Worst of Woke Awards voting categories because Apple is getting nominated. We might nominate them for, we're definitely going to nominate Tim Pool for Worst Actor. And I think we're going to nominate him for Worst Newcomer as well. So you'll have a chance to vote on that. Okay, so Marty26 from Canada, please nuke us. Well, if it liberates you from the Trudeau government, it'll probably be worth it. All right, so let's head back to the Slender Man reasons here. So this one, where are we now? Number 5. This one I thought was really interesting. I'd love to get your, so listen to this and give me examples of horror movies where you think this is really well done. The local town is not treated as a character. So in Slender Man, it's the very typical leafy New England town, and everyone's kind of well off. Even the people that aren't well off are kind of well off because they own their own homes and their homes are nice and they've got a bit of land. And it's the leafy suburb kind of vibe. But the town is not treated as a character. In Slender Man, you get no sense that the town itself has personality and is a character in the movie. You look at, for example, Nightmare on Elm Street, and you do get a sense of the town. You do get quite a little bit of a sense of it, and the way that the parents came together to kill Freddy Krueger. There's this sense of community, and he's getting his revenge on that community. So the town has a little bit of character in it. It's not a big one in Nightmare on Elm Street, but I'll tell you where town has a lot of character. Stranger Things. Now, Stranger Things was able to bring it back from the brink, and season 2 was bad. Season 3 was really bad, but season 4 was great. And one of the things they did really well in season 4, they communicated that the town, I forget the name of the town in Stranger Things, that it is a character in the show. So, there's a lot of characters in the show, but one of them is the town, and that's something that we forget. And that's really well done. And I think that's important in horror movies. Make the town itself a character in the film. Another movie that does a great job of that is Scream. Oh man, what's the name? Can't remember the name of the town in Scream. Shame. But that town is a really good character in the movie. And you can do this. You can make physical locations and even abstract concepts can be characters in a movie. Look at Goodfellas. And this is not my interpretation. Martin Scorsese explicitly said this. Hold on. Make sure I'm not embarrassing myself. Yeah, Martin Scorsese explicitly stated that the Goodfellow lifestyle, the kind of gangster thug lifestyle, that was a character that he wanted to portray in the movie. And when you watch a movie like Goodfellas, that's one of the main characters. One of the main characters is the lifestyle. It's why people watch something like American Psycho and they want to be Patrick Bateman, or they want that life because they fall in love with the character of the lifestyle. And American Psycho is a movie where the lifestyle is a character, the Wall Street psychopath, the fucking asshole Wall Street lifestyle. That's a character in the movie. In Goodfellas, the lifestyle of the gangsters, of the thugs, that's a character in the movie. And then you've also got locations. Locations can also be characters. And there's just none of that going on in Slender Man. Obviously, no abstract concepts because the writers are morons. But also the town itself just isn't characterized, and it's not good enough. All right, so I'll have a look at the chat and see if anybody threw in ideas for places that were good characters. High Tension is an exceptional psychological horror film, says Captain John Rambo. So check that out, everybody. High Tension. I haven't seen it myself, but if, like I say, I mean, a lot of people, they want to watch some good movies around Halloween. Psychological horror film comes recommended from Captain John Rambo. Nullif Gaming says, Despot of Antrim, where are you reading chats from? I'm not seeing them here in chat. I'm just reading them from this little page that I've got on StreamYard. So that's where I'm reading them from. I'm not reading them from YouTube. Comrade Fish, there's no more hope for Hollywood, for modern Hollywood. Indie movies are probably your best bet. That's absolutely true. Most good movies coming out now are indie movies. There are some decent Hollywood movies. I thought Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse was or is it Across the Spider-Verse? Yeah, I mean, it's just that's not confusing, right? Spider-Verse 2 is a good movie that was released this year. Really good. It was one of my favorites. And the Mission Impossible movie was good. Really fun movie. And there might have been one other. The Creator. I quite like The Creator. Thought that was a good movie. And then for indie movies, Tetris is good. And Blackberry is another very good movie. So, I mean, Hollywood can still produce good movies, but it's very, very rare. And honestly, you are going to, it is indie movies. Indie movies are where the really good stuff is going to come from. So I would agree with that. Hey, Despot, there's a guy who gets the bus every Saturday. He looks like you, and I refer to him as Despot. Cool, man. Slender Man is not a horror monster. It's creepypasta, so more like a meme. Well, it was originally a meme, so it was generated online as a meme. But if you're going to make a movie about an online meme, you can do that. But you've got to do something with it. You've got to refine the source material. So you take the raw material and you refine it into something better. So, okay, you've got the Slender Man meme. Now, what are you going to do with it? Make it into a villain or make it into a monster. Now, if it was me, I probably would have just made him a villain, to be perfectly honest. He looks more like a villain to me than a monster. And I think villains are generally more compelling. Or I would have made Slender Man a monster that was under the control of a villain. So maybe the villain is, I don't know, a 50-year-old dwarf. Just for fun. Just for fun. I mean, Hollywood have just stolen 7 roles from dwarfs, from little people, actors. So let's take Slender Man and make him a monster, and his controller, the villain, will be a dwarf in his mid-40s. That'd be pretty cool. Let's do that. That would have been fun. Something like that. That's what I would have done. So you've got the monster, but you've also got a little villain controlling him. So you've got to take the raw material and do something with it. You can't just leave it in its raw state. Otherwise, it's kind of just pointless. I actually talk about that in my Halloween video, which is coming out in a couple of days. All right, so just scrolling down here. LB, your off-the-cuff ideas are better than 99% of what comes out of Hollywood. Well, I suppose that's because all of the good ideas are systematically destroyed through the corporate process. So if somebody does come up with a good idea, Hollywood are just going to say, no, we're not going to do that because X reason. Or even if they do like the idea, it's going to get killed somewhere along the corporate greenlight ladder. A movie isn't just greenlit. It has to get greenlit by the producer, and then the producer has to go to the studio, and the studio has to greenlight it, and then the investors have to greenlight it, and then the board has to greenlight it, and then it gets changed and changed and changed, and by the end, it's absolute unwatchable shite. A perfect example of that. I mean, just look at how Lucasfilm make their movies. Look at Indy 5. Indy 5 is the result of about 7 different scripts. It's an absolute fucking mess. It's an awful film. Jesus Christ. That might be the worst movie of the year. I hate Indy 5. Absolutely despise that movie. All right. So, Poltergeist from 1982 is one of my favorite scary movies. Poltergeist is really scary. That is a movie that I watched as a kid that scared the shit out of me. That is genuinely terrifying, right? You want to scare your kids, show them Poltergeist. Cracking show. Love it. Love at the end where they take the TV and they just push it out onto the street. Love that. Always love that scene. Made by committee, says LSR 1888. Made by committee, greenlit by corporate committee, just dead in the water. Pietro Smoosey, the one that controls Slender Man is a black transgender woman in a wheelchair because that's what we need. Sweet, sweet inclusion. I would rather go for that than what we had. At least it would have been something funny, right? Captain John Rambo, another recommendation here if you're looking for a good Halloween movie. Film Eden Lake, 2008. Eden Lake. So I haven't seen that one, but it comes recommended from Captain John Rambo. So Adopt Me Gang gave me £3, 3 British crowns. Thank you very much, Adopt Me Gang. I really appreciate it. Adopt Me Gang says, love your face paint. Yeah, thanks, man. My wife did this. She did a great job. There's no way I could have done this. My artistic skills are crap. Like my actual drawing skills. So to do this in a mirror would have just been a disaster. Also, I think if you've done, a woman is better because, they do makeup, so they're used to this kind of stuff. But she did a great job. Adopt Me Gang, cool skeletons. Yeah, I love those. I love that skeleton in the background. Yeah, thanks very much. I love so Rob Neath. I love watching people hate something justifiably. Yeah, there's so much to hate this year. There's so much to hate. I tell you what, I'm looking forward to the worst of woke awards. I've already got a lot of the script written and lot of good jokes, and I thank God I don't have to decide these things because you get something like Indy 5, Ant-Man 3, The Flash. Um, God, there's other shite as well. Like what's the worst movie there? Like how do you even decide? They're all so terrible. Thank God I don't have to make up my mind. I just put it out for a vote. Perfect way to do it. Okay, let's see here. Andrew Vasquez says Sleepy Hollow was both terrifying and funny when I saw it in my teens. Yeah, it's a funny movie, and it is terrifying. Like, well, it's kind of terrifying if you're a kid, but man, some of it, like when Christopher Walken plays the headless horseman, and that final scene where he grabs the woman and goes into the tree with her, like that's horrifying stuff. Adopt Me Gang just gave me £20. Thank you very much, Adopt Me Gang. I really appreciate it, man. And he says we love the pumpkins. Yeah, I really wanted to put a candle in the pumpkin on the skeleton there, but the little IKEA electric candles, they were out of batteries, unfortunately, so I couldn't do it. But yeah, I got the skeleton. I got the skeleton holding the pumpkin in the background. I really liked that. Thought that was a nice touch. So Freeman on Descent says, "Have you seen Treevenge?" I like how it's not longer than it needs to be. I haven't seen Treevenge, but I know what you're getting at when you talk about the correct length of a movie. So just watching back on Nightmare on Elm Street, it's 1 hour 35 minutes long. Perfect. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It gets to the point. It does what it needs to do. Great stuff. I love it. And that's exactly what you need. You need a movie that just is the right length. Too many modern movies, they're just too long. They are taking far too long to get to the point. They're delaying things. A lot of it's filler. A good example, like look at Ahsoka. Ahsoka, I know it's not a film, it's a TV show, but so much of Ahsoka is filler. It's Ahsoka is very bad. It's not as bad as say Obi-Wan or Boba Fett, but it could have been mediocre if they had just cut out half of the shite and gotten on with it. Because it did at least have an identifiable half decent story. It was okay, the story, but it was so boring because a lot of it was so drawn out. Really crap stuff, but get rid of the filler and get to the fucking point. My God, it's like a lot of these modern movie makers, they've just forgotten the basics. Look at the great stuff from the 80s. You know, the Wes Craven movies, Nightmare on Elm Street, just it gets to the point. It's simple, it's direct, it's not wasting your time, and it keeps you constantly engaged. Great stuff. Very important. Miyagi. I like the movie Babadook. It's a psychological horror where a demon from a children's book tries to force a mother to kill her son. By the way, they're nominating a new category of movies that shouldn't even exist anymore. Yeah, I actually I make reference to the Babadook in my Halloween video, so hopefully you'll enjoy that. Comrade Fish, thanks for mentioning Sleepy Hollow, guys. I forgot to watch it again this year, and it's 3 days to Halloween. Yeah, watch it. Cracking show. Very atmospheric, very Halloween, and great movie. Okay, so I'll just head back. Oh, hold on a minute. Billy Badass, Despot of Antrim, you know Kathleen Kennedy is responsible for Poltergeist, right? I'm pretty sure she is a poltergeist at this stage. Let's head over and look at reason number 6. This is, I'll do a couple here. So reason number 6 is sound effects washing. So basically, Slender Man takes a bunch of sound effects that are associated with horror movies, throws them into the mix, and just hopes that that will make it sound more horror movie, and that will convince people that it's scary and that it's good horror. So, for example, one of the cliches that they throw in here is the automated pitch drop grandfather clock bell. Grandfather clock bell strike. So you got the grandfather clock, and it goes boom, and then you automate it so that the pitch lowers, so it goes ding, and it goes down like that. You hear that a lot in Nightmare on Elm Street. Nightmare on Elm Street might have been the first movie to do this, whereby you take a bell strike and you automate the pitch so that the pitch goes down incrementally. And they did it really well, really effectively, but it's really over the top and really obvious in Slender Man. And there's no reason for it. It doesn't reference anything. It's not referencing time. Like, time is very important in Nightmare on Elm Street. And because, you know, the longer you spend asleep, the more likely it is you're going to die. And the clocks and alarm clocks, that's one of the minor themes of the movie, the importance of time and trying to escape Freddy Krueger and setting her alarm clock to wake her up. So it makes sense that you would have this automated grandfather clock bell lowering in pitch. But why did they do it in Slender Man? Like, it doesn't relate to anything. They just did it because it's a cliche, a horror cliche, and they thought that it would sound cool, and it's just annoying. It's really pretentious. All right, so number 7, and this one I thought was really interesting. There's far too much screen time. So characters looking at screens. When characters are looking at screens, we, the audience, are watching a screen on which people are watching a screen. It's very dull. This is the same reason you rarely see characters look through paperwork. It's boring to watch, but watching characters on a screen, watching a screen, is a particularly monotonous mirror effect. It's something you don't see a lot of in movies. You will sometimes see them watching TV, for example, but it's more of a background thing. But when the main point of the scene is just watching a character look at a computer screen or watching a character on their phone, it's really boring. It's a very monotonous thing to look at a screen of somebody looking at a screen. This was another problem with that movie I talked about, Bros. A lot of Bros is the main character on his phone. There's an entire scene where he has a text exchange with a guy he wants to hook up with. It's really boring. It's absolutely mind-numbingly boring. But I didn't talk about it in my video because there was so much other stuff I wanted to talk about, and it was kind of a minor thing. But it's quite interesting. Screen time, characters having screen time is a really boring thing to watch, and there's a ton of it in Slender Man. It's a really basic thing that you want to get right. Just make sure your characters aren't staring at screens the whole bloody time, because it's boring. Like, there's a scene where the girls are sitting around a laptop and they're watching the laptop for 10 minutes. And then there's a lot of other screens where they're chatting on the computer. And there's a lot of other shots where they're scenes where they're looking at their phones. And the amount of screen time, characters looking at screens in that movie, is ridiculous. And it's so monotonous. It's such a stupid stupid thing to include in a movie. It's really boring. And it has this psychological effect. It's so monotonous. Ooh, so Ghost Spider. So when will Disney remake Star Wars Empire Strikes Back? It's probably only a matter of time before Disney remake the original Star Wars trilogy. I know Kathleen Kennedy wanted to do it. She wanted to remake it, but to make Leia the main focus. So instead of Luke, it would be Leia. That was an idea that was going around Lucasfilm, and Kathleen Kennedy was very much in favor of it. I don't know what Bob Iger and the Disney leadership thought of it, but I do think that it's probably only a matter of time before Disney eventually, decide to rape the OT and remake those. So Marty26, she did an amazing job with Galadriel as a Psychopath. Congrats on 50k subs. Thank you very much, man. And yeah, I really liked that Galadriel as a Psychopath video. We underestimate the work of good editors in the past. A lot of ideas that were unnecessary. I hate modern movies. It has to go past 120-minute mark for some reason. Yeah, it's very, very important. You've got to just get in there and cut out shite. Like, even in my last video, I had this it was kind of fun intro, but it was somewhat off topic and it was a bit wanky. And I decided to just cut it out, just chop it straight off and get straight into the topic. And you've got to do that, not just if you're making videos on YouTube, but, filmmakers. It's hard to do, I know, because you're kind of in love with this scene. You created this, but a lot of the time you've just got to go in there with a butcher knife and get rid of the fat. Also, did you watch South Park's Joining the Pandaverse, says JC? I haven't got around to it yet because I've been watching a lot of Halloween stuff and I've been busy with my Halloween video, but I will watch it. And my understanding is that Kathleen Kennedy is one of the main villains in it, which is wonderful, because what she needs, I love the fact that it's just a giant middle finger to Disney and to Kathleen Kennedy, because they deserve it. All right. Billy Badass, I was shocked myself. Her name is plastered right at the end of the movie. Weirdly, I don't remember that before years ago. Paddy Pool FC, The Thing, the original with Kurt Russell. What a fucking movie. I loved it then and still love it. Jaws is the only thing that scared me more. Congrats on 50k, by the way. Thank you very much, Paddy. Yeah, The Thing, the original Thing is, there's nothing I can say that hasn't already been said about the movie, but it's absolutely fantastic. And if you haven't seen it in a while, it's definitely one to check out this Halloween. Joffrey III says, thanks for reviewing Robin Hood so that I don't have to watch it. I don't think anyone's watching that thing, man. A lot of people are watching videos online, just tearing it to shreds and mocking it. And it was so terrible that I felt duty bound to do it. I felt, well, look, what is the point of having a channel where I talk about shit movies and shows if I'm not going to review Robin with a Y Hood because it's just astoundingly bad? My God, Robin with a Y Hood is something else. I might do another video on it. I'm thinking of doing like a full season review. So I'll wait until the season finishes and then I'll kind of do a full review of the season. Maybe we'll see what happens. There's a lot of videos I want to make, but I would consider doing that. And JC says, "Is Saw 10 any good?" Yeah, Saw 10's good. It's not amazing, but hey, it's a Saw movie, right? It is good. It's a good, fun movie, and I would recommend that you check it out if you like horror movies. You'll have a good time with it. Although sometimes it's crazy over the top. I'll not spoil any of it, but it does. It's some of it pushes suspension of disbelief quite far. Let's just say that. But good stuff. Maybe Kathleen Kennedy was going for a legacy to never be forgotten, no matter what. Says LSR 1888. I don't know what she. I mean, I guess she obviously was very concerned about her legacy because she probably didn't need the money that much. Maybe it was just this weird revenge fantasy that she wanted to indulge to absolutely destroy the franchises of the men that had kept her down her whole career. Who knows? Who knows? Dragon of the West says, "Good work. Keep up the good work, Despot. Your videos are legendary." Thank you very much, man, and I'm glad you enjoy them. All right. So I'm going to move on to number 8 in why Slender Man is so bad. So abandoned plot threads. There are plot threads that are introduced. So the first victim's father is going after some other girl saying, "Where's my daughter?" And he's this decaying alcoholic. And then they just abandon that plot thread. And there's a second girl goes nuts and they abandon that plot thread. And there's a boyfriend that's introduced and they abandon that plot thread. There's a bunch of stuff that's introduced. Even this vague attempt to figure out who Slenderman is and what he's about, they just abandon that. The movie is awful. It introduces these beginnings of plot threads, which they just dispense with pretty much very soon thereafter. It's a confusingly terrible movie. It's almost like, how could anyone write a script this bad? You've got these ideas that you're introducing, and then 10 pages later, you've completely forgotten about them. It's remarkably terrible. Number 9 is bad creature design. So I talked a little bit about this earlier. Listen to this quote from Oscar Wilde. "A mask says more than a face." A perfect example of that is Scream, the Scream movies. So the mask in Scream has become very iconic. And I think one of the reasons it's so iconic is because it's quite blank. It's just a screaming ghost face, and there's not many features on it. And so the idea is that anyone can be the killer. You can take this mask and you can put it on anyone, and it will fit them just the same. And it's not like the Leatherface mask or the Jason Voorhees mask, which is very connected to their personality. It's an anybody mask. Like, anybody can just throw it on. It's supposed to be super generic because it reflects the fact that anybody can be the killer. And that's what the mask says. It's the anonymity of the killer and the everyman murderer, that's what's so fun about it. But the Slender Man, it's neither a mask nor a face. It's just a big symbol of, it's just nothing. It's just a whole lot of nothing. And the creators just thought it looked cool because he has no face. There are ways for characters to look cool without a face. Like, for a great example of it is No Face from Spirited Away. No Face is an awesome character and looks amazing. And obviously he doesn't have a face, which is why he's called No Face. And Slender Man doesn't have a face, but it looks so naff. It just looks corny and shit. It's just such an awful design. Look, just pick one. He can either have a mask or he can have a face, but this in between, oh, he has no face. No, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Make it a mask or make it a face. Just pick one. Because the nothingness of it it says nothing. I mean, even No Face has a mouth in Spirited Away. All right, so another one here is that there is no symbolic or thematic depth. in Slender Man. It's just incompetence hiding behind vagueness. So we saw the same thing in an episode of Ahsoka. There's an episode of Ahsoka where Ahsoka goes, she's between, it's one of those between life and death episodes. She's between life and death, apparently, and she meets Anakin. And when you look at the different possibilities, none of them really make sense. Is Anakin a Force ghost? Well, he can't be a Force ghost because this is happening basically as a hallucination in her head. Or is it maybe Anakin physically pulled her into the world between worlds, but then if Force ghosts can now just pull people at will into the world between worlds, that opens up a whole can of worms and it basically breaks canon. So that doesn't work. If she was asleep and Anakin came to her as a figment of her own imagination, then it's not Anakin teaching her any of this, is it? It's just a dream, which means that it's fairly meaning. It doesn't make sense. It's so vague that you can't definitively say what it is or isn't. And a lot of people were getting very excited online. A lot of idiots were saying, "Oh, it's so deep, it's so amazing." No, it's not deep. It's vague. It's deliberately vague so that uh, Filoni can hide behind that vagueness. He can hide his incompetence and his lack of ingenuity and his lack of ideas. He can just hide it behind nothingness. He can hide it behind vagueness. And that's what was going on in that episode. If you've seen it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Super vague, but pretending to be really, really deep. And it's not deep, it's shit. And it was the same thing with Slender Man. Just there's no depth there, but it has this pretense of depth, but there's nothing there. It's all very vague. The directors had no idea what they were talking about. All right, so we'll head back to the chat here for a bit. Pietro Smoosey, about Saw, what's your favorite Saw trap? That's a really good question. My favorite Saw trap. I do like the buckets are pretty cool. The buckets that are slowly dragging them forward. That's a cool one. And in this one, there's a very in Saw 10, there's a trap that I really like. It's a head trap. That was really cool. And there's a trap in Spiral, which will pull out the guy's tongue if he doesn't I can't remember if he doesn't chop off his fingers or something. I can't remember what it is. But yeah, the Saw traps are really fun. That's a really fun trope in those movies, the traps. JC says, thoughts on Hereditary? I've only just started watching Hereditary. I'm about 35 minutes in, and I think it's excellent so far, but I would need to watch it. I think it's good enough that I would watch it a couple of times before I came to any definitive thoughts on it. But I was really enjoying what I was watching with Hereditary. It's one of the better movies that like I said, I haven't seen the full thing, but I started watching it and I was really enjoying it. Nolfi Gaming, Despot of Antrim, please review Wheel of Time. You might not know the lore broken, but you can definitely see that the main characters are sidelined and girl bosses. Yeah, I did a live chat with the Angry Bootneck about Wheel of Time. He was disgusted by it because he was a big fan of the books, and these things absolutely massacre the books. They massacre the books. They just absolutely destroy them. So any fans of the books utterly despise Wheel of Time. Would I do a review? To be honest, I probably wouldn't do a review of Wheel of Time because I would want to have that background of having read the books. Just viewing it on its own, I did watch the first 4 episodes of season 1. It makes a lot of the same mistakes that Rings of Power makes, but because it's working from these really good books, it's able to use a lot of good material, so it's not as bad as Rings of Power. Apparently it's just burning through a huge amount of material from the books per episode. But yeah, not quite as bad as Rings of Power, I thought, but still very bad. It's just that Rings of Power is astoundingly awful. They're two very comparable shows, though. Like, one of the mistakes that Wheel of Time makes is that no matter where you go, you will get university campus diversity. So you could go to a village, a mining village in the arse end of the arse end of nowhere. You walk into a pub, sit down at a table, and there's a black guy, there's an Asian guy, there's a mixed race guy, there's a Martian, there's a Pacific Islander, and I am not exaggerating, right? In this tiny wee mining town in the arse end of nowhere. How are there 7 different races existing in a town that is 1,000 miles inland in the equivalent of the medieval ages, or something like that? That's not possible. It's just impossible. Like, you would need to have mass immigration on a massive scale for that to work. It's just absurd. It's so absurd, and it completely tears me out of the experience of watching the show. It's completely immersion shattering. If you want to have that kind of diversity, have it, but just have it look more realistic. So if you want to have black characters, they can be from a more southern region that is analogous to Africa, and you can have Middle Eastern types that are from a kind of Middle Eastern area. But that's not what they want to do. They want to pretend that everywhere is downtown LA all the time in every fantasy world, and it sucks and it ruins everything. That makes everywhere look like everywhere else. I mean, they call it diversity, but there's nothing diverse about it. It just makes everywhere look like everywhere else. It's so boring. It's like what you get in Europe now. You go to Paris, you go to London, you go to Amsterdam. It's the same fucking city. It's just these gigantic multicultural cities flooded with third world migrants, and large sections of the city are no-go areas, and they're just big fucking dumps. They're all the same city now, a lot of them, and mostly English speaking. You might get the odd bit of French if you go to Paris. Maybe if you hang around for a few months, you might hear one or two phrases of French. Man, I didn't like Paris at all when I went there. But that's what it's like with fantasy now. Everywhere you go, every fantasy world in Hollywood is just downtown LA, and it's completely immersion shattering. All right. So Melodic Method gave me £10. Thank you very much, Melodic Method. I really appreciate it. Have you seen Rob Zombie's 2007 Halloween? If so, what are your thoughts? I've seen a bunch of Halloween movies, and I lose track of them. I lose track of which is which. The last Halloween movie I thought was absolutely terrible. I might have seen Rob Zombie's 2007 Halloween, because so many movies have come out now called Halloween. I even think the last one was just called Halloween. There's been a bunch, so it's hard to keep track, but I might have seen that. And if I did, I probably can't remember it that well. But thank you very much for the $10, Melodic Method. Captain John Rambo. The problem with modern Hollywood is most of the time there is no screenplay. Most of these idiots make shit up on the spot, which is why most films make absolutely no sense. I know that that's certainly the case with Disney. So Disney do a lot of that. They'll do their they'll film like different iterations of the same scene, and then they pull it all together in editing. Apparently Marvel are big fans of doing that, then it turns it into a mess. And certainly you've got movies like, I think Indiana Jones 5, they filmed 7 different endings, 6 or 7 different endings, according to Doomcock. It's just crazy stuff, like the shite that they're getting into. With like, what's so wrong with just writing a script and following it from start to finish without some board of corporate hacks getting involved and demanding that it be butchered and chopped up and put back together again in different pieces? Awful. All right, so Billy Badass, just so you know, Director X was confronted on a stream. I was watching about the blatant negative black stereotypes, and the dude in all his hubris rejects that and actually cursed people out. Yeah, he's an idiot. I mean, he's made a real arse of himself in the whole Robin Hood backlash. I saw a review of Wheel of Time by Greg Owen. Yeah, Greg Owen's done some good reviews of Wheel of Time. He and I think he's read the books as well, so he's definitely a YouTuber to check out if you want to look at a good review of Wheel of Time. All right. So Goran says, "Will the woke cancel culture ever stop?" Well, everything stops. It doesn't matter how horrible or how evil or how hideous it is. It's always going to stop. So you look at, for example, the Chinese Cultural Revolution, which was horrible, absolutely horrible, just a really hideous period in history. But it came to an end. You know, it did come to an end, and all evil things, all bad things will come to an end eventually. And it's the same with the woke era. It's the same with cancel culture, because eventually people will get the message that today it's Russell Brand or whoever the latest cancel victim is this week. It's him today, but it's you tomorrow. They'll get this message eventually that you really just can't live in this environment whereby some girl comes along and says, "Oh, that guy, you know, felt me up without my permission at a party 20 years ago. Cancel him and destroy his career and send him off to jail." That's just not a standard that anyone can live by, and we all know it. And being cancelled for something that you said 12 years ago that at the time 99% of people agreed with. Yeah, how can anyone have a career under those standards? It's impossible. And I think more and more people are beginning to realize that, and eventually that culture will die out because it's just not sustainable. It just isn't. No one is safe under that kind of culture. And who wants to live like that? You can't even fucking sleep at night because you're afraid that tomorrow you're going to wake up and it's going to be you. You're the one who's going to be getting the rape accusation that's 20 years old, and there's not a shred of evidence for it, but everyone has to take it seriously because of the political environment. Or maybe it's that you said something on Twitter before it was X 13 years ago. You said you mocked some guy in a dress or something, and that's your career over. It's not a standard that anyone can live by, and it's certainly not something you can build a career in. It has to go eventually. All evil things end. Woke culture, cancel culture, it will end eventually. The only question is, how many movie studios and how many careers is it going to drag down with it? It seems like Disney are prepared to go down with the ship. Disney seem to have made the decision that they've, chained themselves to the helm. They're going down with the ship as far as they're concerned, as far as Bob Iger's concerned. So that's that. And I know he said that he wants Disney to be less political, but that doesn't mean that they're going to stop making woke content. From his perspective, what that means is they're going to stop getting involved in domestic political arguments around legislation. And they should stop doing that, but they should also they should stop the messaging, but that's not going to happen. I think Disney are going to go down with the ship ultimately. And when is this woke nonsense going to wrap up? Probably by the end of the decade, maybe a bit earlier, but we'll see what happens. Ezekiel Rayfield, how would you fix the Star Wars franchise? It's a good question, and it's a fair question. It's been discussed a lot, but I think what I would do to fix the Star Wars franchise, let's go to total crazy scenario here. Let's say that Disney go down, right? They end up just going belly up, and Star Wars goes on the market, and I don't know, some George Lucas buys it back for a few billion pounds, a few $1 billion. There you go. How do you fix it now? So the first thing you have to do is retcon the DST. The DST just isn't the thing. And you announce the retcon. You say this isn't canon anymore. And even if we wanted to be canon, we couldn't make it canon because it doesn't make any sense. It's an absolute self-contradictory mess from start to finish. The first one was really just a remake of A New Hope anyway, and the other two are just an absolute calamity. So we're done with those. That's it. They're deleted. All the shite that Disney have done is gone, right? Forget about it. Just forget about it. What a Star Wars, in order to bring back the Star Wars franchise, they need to stop making so many shows. I would just cancel every single show, right? Just finish Andor. Andor's really good. Andor season 2, wrap things up there, and then all the other shows get canceled. No more spin-off shows. All right. Leave the current timeline and go a few hundred years or even a few thousand years before and make a kind of Game of Thrones style show, like a 7 or 8 season show, which just takes you through a really epic arc, thousands of years or hundreds of years before the Luke Skywalker timeline, before the Skywalker saga, and have it just 8 seasons of really fucking awesome TV. And then you can go back to making movies after you have rebuilt the franchise from that. But that's what I would do. Just focus on one single high budget, awesome show that is a huge space opera for 7 or 8 seasons. And that's just going to be it. You're not going to fatigue the audience with all these crappy shows flying everywhere like Marvel have done and Star Wars have done. So that's what I would do. I would just focus on one big show, and then I would go to the movies. You mean the Old Republic? You could do the Old Republic, yeah. You could do other stuff. You could do just before the 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 fall of the Old Republic and the construction of the new empire, things like that, a few hundred years before. I mean, because the Star Wars timeline is tens of thousands of years old. So something like that. Go back to the Old Republic days and just make it a huge epic with new characters, new fresh characters, new fresh ideas. Something risky, all right? I would get rid of this completely risk averse attitude that Lucasfilm has, that they want everything to be IP. They want everything to be familiar character names. All that has to go. New, fresh ideas, new characters, and a new single show that isn't getting watered down by all these other crappy shows. So that's how I would fix the Star Wars franchise. I do think it could be fixed, but you would need to scrap all the shit that they're doing right now. It can't get fixed on Disney. As long as Disney have it, Star Wars hasn't got a chance. Although I think I'm pretty much done making Star Wars videos though, because my last video I did a Lando video, a video about Solo and what they did to Lando, and it's a good video. But man, it just that video sank like a stone. The no one's watching it now. Like it's getting very few views a day. I think it's like right now it's like my 15th most popular video. So very few views, and it's like there's just not that much interest in Star Wars content anymore. I mean, Little Platoon does really good Star Wars breakdowns on his channel, but generally speaking, I think people are just fucking done with Star Wars and they're just sick hearing about it. So Dan Trainon, great stream, Despot. I was doing some drawings while listening to it. Well, I'm glad you enjoy the stream, man, and yeah, hope you're enjoying the drawings. Glad to hear that you're doing something fun and creative. Okay, stream has been with death of quality control. I don't understand that comment. Sorry, man. Star Wars should write a strong female character that weighs it. Yeah, that's exactly what they should do. What Star Wars really needs is a strong female character. That'll save the franchise. Ezekiel Rayfield says the rise of Skywalker killed my love of Star Wars. I would say you speak for a lot of people with that comment. All right, let's head back and look at number 11. So we'll do the last two reasons why Slender Man is so shite. Number 11, almost all of the fundamentals are botched. This is really simple, but it's important. So bad camera work, crap music, shitty acting, poor lighting. It's really ugly, drab cinematography. I was watching bits of it on the subway on my phone, and I couldn't see it. I couldn't see it because I was in a lit environment, and the cinematography is so dark in some spots. Very erratic pacing. The first act pacing is bad, but after that, it just becomes awful. It becomes unwatchably terrible and erratic. And then the third act, the pacing just shoots up, and that's kind of when when Slender Man starts acting and attacking the girls, and that's the only time that happens. Awful, awful pacing. Very poor characterization. Like I mentioned earlier, all of the characters, all of the girls are basically just the same character, and Slender Man isn't even a character, and the town isn't a character. There's no characterization in this movie. It's just awful. And a bad ending, really bad ending. So because they didn't do anything, they didn't explain who Slender Man was, they didn't develop any characters, they didn't develop any lore, they didn't develop any ideas. By the time they got to the end of the movie, they didn't know how to end it. They didn't know what they were supposed to do because they hadn't built up anything to resolve. There was nothing to resolve. So at the end of the movie, they just had the younger sister of one of the girls do a voiceover, a really crappy voiceover for like 30 seconds, and that's it. That's the end of the movie. Shockingly bad. And they just tacked that on because they couldn't think of anything else to do. Like I said, they hadn't built up anything to resolve, so they couldn't have a resolution. It's why they were forced to do that really shitty ending. And there are plot holes in the movie. So, for example, the police go up, one of the girls goes missing, and the police go to search her house and they take all her stuff away. Then her friends break into the house and they find a laptop in the cupboard that the police missed, which is just, it's ridiculous. The police would not miss a laptop in a cupboard. That's just one minor plot hole, and there's lots of other plot holes which I'll not get into because who cares. And number 12, it's very boring. It's a very boring movie. You don't care about any of the characters. There are no characters, like I said. You don't care about the location. You don't care about this Slender Man monster or villain or whatever he is. They raise a couple of interesting questions, but they never even begin to resolve or answer them. It's a slow, pointless, placid, tedious movie. It's very, very boring. So just absolute shite. All right, so we're going to go on to American Psycho 2 next, which I have a few thoughts on. All right, let's read a few of these comments before I get to American Psycho 2. Nick Brown, when a woman does it, it is not illegal. That's exactly right. When a woman does it, it's not illegal, as Hollywood have taught us. But now I love to hate Star Wars. I don't even love to hate Star Wars anymore. I'm just done with it. I'm so bored of it. The only reason I watched Ahsoka was to talk about it during streams. I didn't watch a single episode of it voluntarily. It's so boring that it's even boring to hate on it now. It's just awful. It's the worst. It's got to be the worst franchise out there, hasn't it? And it's so sad that I have to say that that Star Wars is the worst franchise out there. But man, it is. Everything they do is so bad now. And do you know what I think when I think of Star Wars now? Modern Star Wars content, boring. It's all just so boring. Like Obi-Wan was really boring. Boba Fett, just a tedious wee bore of a show. Mandalorian season 3 achieved levels of boredom never seen before in human history. And Ahsoka, overwhelmingly, the characteristic that defines Ahsoka is boring. It's so boring. It's fucking tedious. Star Wars is such a boring franchise now, and it's sad that I have to say that, but it's true, and we all know it. I'm so sick of it. Everyone's done with that franchise. Okay. Nuclear Bomb, Despot. Do you know any novels that would make a really good adaptation? Yeah, I do. What I'm really looking forward to is the Three Body Problem. I'll pull it up here actually in case you want to check it out. So the Three Body Problem is a Chinese sci-fi novel by Xi Liu, and I think it's about 20 years old actually. Let's see. The first one was published in 2008, so 15 years old, and absolutely brilliant. It's one of my favorite books of this century. Let me just share the screen here so you can check. You can see what it looks like, and maybe it's got some really. You can get the audiobooks on Audible, or if you don't like audiobooks, you can just buy it. There's got obviously English translations. I didn't read it in Chinese, so here it is. The Three Body Problem, absolutely brilliant, awesome stuff. One of my favorite sci-fi novels. I mean, you could consider it one giant novel. It's called The Remembrance of Earth's Past, I think is the name of the actual tome, the 3-book tome. And it's one of my favorite sci-fi trilogies. Absolutely superb. All 3 books are excellent. Strongly recommend them if you like sci-fi. Wonderful books. And these are being adopted by the same guys, DB Weiss. I always forget their names. DB Weiss and David Benioff. So Benioff and Weiss, who are the guys who did Game of Thrones. They've done a Netflix adaptation of this. So let me just check what comes up. Netflix Three Body Problem. This is coming out in January. So you'll notice some of the same actors from Game of Thrones here. They've got the fat guy who played Jon Snow's friend in The Watch. Can't remember his name, but he's in there. And there's a few other. Yeah, there's that guy. He was Stannis's first mate of his navy, so he's in there as well. And they've got a couple of other actors from Game of Thrones, so they're doing this adaptation of the Three Body Problem. They've actually got a trailer out. It's a teaser trailer, and it's literally just like a few frames that they tease out, but it looks pretty cool. And to be fair, Benioff and Weiss did good work as long as they were just adapting the book. They only started to have big problems when they were generating the material themselves. And this is all finished. It's not like the Chinese author is still writing this stuff. He's finished. This book was finished years ago. So if they just adapt it as well as they did with Game of Thrones, and Netflix have thrown a ton of money behind this, it's going to be excellent. So I'm optimistic about it, but I'll not get too optimistic. We all remember Game of Thrones season 8. You know, that season of television that cannot be named. We all remember that, and we know how bad that was. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I'm cautiously optimistic about Three Body Problem. I hope that Benioff and Weiss can get it off the ground, and that it will actually be good. So Adopt Me Gang gave me £10, which I think is the third tip he's given me tonight. So I really appreciate it, man. Glad that you're listening to the stream and enjoying it. So thank you again. And There was a comment I wanted to respond to. Oh yeah, Teddy O says I loved your Lando video. Thanks very much, man. I enjoyed that video because I felt like somebody needed to stand up and call out what had been done to Lando in Solo because that movie sucked and what they did to Lando sucked. Dan Trianon, what is the deal with trying to sexualize children and trying to insert them into the culture wars? It is evil. It is very evil, and I mean, there's a lot of reasons for it. If they can get away with that, they've won. If they can go after the children and win, they can do anything. If people will tolerate the sexualization of their children, they are conquered. They're beaten. And the regime knows this, and the alphabet mafia knows this, which is why they're going after kids. But there's been a huge backlash against that. So for example, Pride Month, I was really pleased in 2023 to see that there was actually genuine backlash against Pride Month. 2023's Pride Month was easily the least popular and indeed the most unpopular Pride Month ever. So it used to be 10 years ago, Pride Month. Oh, everyone loves it. It's wonderful. And if you say anything against it, you're just a horrible bigot and a homophobe. But this year, people were genuinely standing up to it and saying, you know what? No, enough of this. Enough of this shite. Stop dancing naked in the streets in front of kids, you pervert. This is just sick. And you even seen gay men, like what's his name? Strange Death of Europe. Douglas Murray. And I've actually read all of his books. I'm bad with names when I'm on live on stream. I draw a blank, but Douglas Murray, he's brilliant, big fan, and he stood up against. He's always been standing up against Pride Month, and he's had some good debates in Pride Month, like in June this year, when he was talking to these idiots, these alphabet mafiosos, and he was saying to them like, "You're morons. You're not celebrities. Stop dancing in the street as if the general public is the audience that are there to adore you. You're morons. Stop doing this." And it's great to see people standing up against it. And one of the reasons people actually have the courage now to stand up against this LGBT indoctrination shite and horrible garbage like Pride Month is because they've gone after kids and people don't like it, and they're prepared now to say, no, we're absolutely not going to tolerate this. And it's important for everybody to do this. Don't be one of those people that whose attitude is, oh, I really want to say something, but I'm just afraid because I'm afraid of what everyone else will say, and I'm afraid of losing my job or something. No, that's not good enough. You've got to stand up against this crap, because if no one's prepared to stand up, if everyone's just going to sheepishly coy away from criticism of something that is just sick, then we've lost. And apart from anything else, any society that celebrates sexually sterile lifestyles, it's a very unhealthy society. We should be celebrating family. We should be celebrating children and parents who put in so much work to raise the next generation. They're the people we should be celebrating, not people who live entirely for themselves and who never contribute any children to the next generation. There's nothing wrong with being a homosexual. That's fine. It's not immoral, but don't expect to be celebrated if you're not even going to contribute anything to the next generation and to produce kids, to produce the next generation of humanity. The people we should be celebrating are parents and families, not people who live these hedonistic and hypersexualized lifestyles. All right, so let's head back to Dan Trianon. I like the Douglas Murray, and yeah, Pride Month is awful. Yeah, it is, and Douglas Murray's great. And if you're interested in contemporary politics and you like reading those kind of books, Douglas Murray's books, they're fantastic. I would recommend his stuff. All right, so American Psycho 2. All right, let's get a little bit of context here. So I'll just show you a few stills from the movie because it's probably not what you think. All right, let's take a look here. Oh, American Psycho 2 has Mila Kunis. So let me show you a few shots here, a few stills from the movie. Right, so American Psycho 2, it stars Mila Kunis and William Shatner. Right, William Shatner the Great. He's great in it. He's really good. Even Mila Kunis is kind of funny in it. She's got this. She's kind of charming in it. It's a terrible role. It's a terrible script, but she is, kind of funny in it. And we'll take a look here at some of these stills. So she plays this. really cute young college girl, and she wants to get into, is it Quantico? She wants to get into Quantico to be an FBI profiler or something. And she does this by she needs to get the TA position. So William Shatner is the professor, and she wants to get the teaching assistant job from with William Shatner, because she believes that that's a ticket into Quantico, and then she can become an FBI profiler. But she has to kill this girl because this girl is one of her rivals for the TA position, and she also has to kill a couple of other characters. She has to kill this guy. She strangles him to death with a condom. The scene is not as fun as that sounds, and she kills somebody else who's also a rival for the role. Now, this is a movie that it could qualify as being so bad that it's actually kind of good. But I first of all have to say, American Psycho 2 has nothing to do with American Psycho. So what happened is this. So I think it's Lionsgate Films. Lionsgate decided that they were going to attach the name American Psycho to it because at the time, I think this was 2003, something like that, 2002, 2003, they had they'd released American Psycho, and it was doing really well on DVD and rental and home rental, and it was making them millions of dollars. Just it had failed at the box office, but it was bringing in a huge amount of money on DVD sales. So they thought, wow, this is amazing. If we make this straight to DVD movie, which American Psycho 2 was, it was originally called The Girl Who Could Not Die, I think. So they changed the name to American Psycho 2 and did a couple of reshoots to insert, like, for example, at the start of the movie, Mia Kunis does a voiceover explaining how she was kidnapped when she was a little girl by Patrick Bateman. And then she killed Patrick Bateman and she escaped, and now she's a psychopath. That's really it. That's the only connection. But that was done in a reshoot. Most of the movie was filmed before they decided to call it American Psycho 2. So that's what it's about. And this was not an easy movie to find. I had a hard time finding this movie online. It's absolutely terrible, but I'll just briefly talk you through some of my notes on it. So, yeah, the name was tagged on at the last minute just because they wanted to boost those sales. It was originally called The Girl Who Wouldn't Die. The movie is so terrible that Mila Kunis expressed regret for being in the movie, not because it's gratuitous or because it has, really hypersexualized nudity. I wish it did. It would make the movie somewhat better, but it doesn't. It's a very tame little movie. She expressed regret because it's just so bad. It's just such an appallingly terrible film. It's very stagnant and very cheap looking, and it's trying to be this dark comedy, I think, but it's just so boring that it can't. Its one saving grace is William Shatner. William Shatner's really good in it, and I could almost recommend watching it if you like his style of acting and you like him. You could watch it because he is really good in it. But the movie itself is it's mind-bogglingly bad. The kill scenes look absolutely terrible. There's one scene where Mila Kunis, she puts on a mask and a cloak. She kind of looks like the killer from Scream, and she breaks into somebody's house and she beats her to death with a photo frame. But you see her doing this in the reflection of a TV, and it looks absolutely terrible. Like the kills in it. Another kill, she goes out with a guy and she gets him very excited, and she brings him back to her apartment on the understanding that they're going to have sex. And the guy gets really excited and he's like, oh, yeah, I'm going to get laid. And she says, oh, I'll go get a condom from my friend. So he lies down in her bed and he's lying down there chilling out. And then out of nowhere, she comes behind him and she strangles him to death with a condom. It's so bad. There's another scene where her parents come to visit, and her parents say, "My God, what is that smell? You need to start cleaning up this apartment." And she says, "Oh, I know, I know." And when her parents leave, she opens up the closet, and it's a decomposing body that was causing the smell. So her parents have and this is like a dormitory in a university dorm. So her parents have just walked in. They've been literally feet away from a decomposing human body, and they have vaguely noticed the smell. And this isn't like a body that she killed yesterday. It's been rotting in there for months. The movie doesn't make any sense. It's just astoundingly terrible. It's an absolutely awful film. But I mean, yeah, William Shatner's great. Mia Kunis is hot in it. that's about it, really. And it's so absurdly bad that you can kind of enjoy it on that level, on an ironic level. I actually still haven't watched the last 10 minutes. I had to stop watching it for some reason, and I just haven't made it through the last 10 minutes because it's so bloody bad. But you can kind of have a bit of fun with it. I think you can have a little bit of fun with it, but it has absolutely no relation whatsoever to American Psycho. I only watched it because it's called American Psycho 2, and I'm pretty sure I'm probably the only human being this year that has watched it. Like I said, it was really hard to find it online. It's a very, very obscure movie and absolutely terrible. But like I say, if you like movies that are so astoundingly bad that they're actually kind of funny, you might enjoy it. And like I say, Mila Kunis is charming in it, and William Shatner's really good. Um, but my God, it's and the plot holes as well. So, for example, she kills two students in this movie and nobody notices. Like one of the guys she kills, her first victim is this wealthy guy from a wealthy family. She kills him and no one notices. Like no friends, no family. This guy has a super rich father. No one comes, knocking on the door saying, "Oh, hey, my son hasn't answered his phone for 2 weeks." She just kills him and that's it. He disappears from the movie. And she kills another girl, and likewise, she disappears from the movie. Nobody gets suspicious. Nobody comes knocking on the door. It's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. The movie just exists in its own plane of reality that has absolutely nothing to do with real life, or there's no logical consequence to any of the actions that happen. It's a farcically awful movie. Oh, Christ. So that's it. That's my wee rant about American Psycho 2. It was almost worth watching just because it's so bad and so strange. The complete absence of consequences having actions. The movie doesn't even attempt to explain why a student is murdered and no one has shown up to inquire for 3 weeks. Not even the police or anyone. It just dispenses with actions and consequences. It's strange, strange and truly terrible movie. All right, so I'll go over to the chat here for a bit. Whew. I had no idea American Psycho 2 was a thing. Yeah, it's a thing and it's truly terrible. I filmed Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Okay, cool. Uh, so they did a Super Mario Bros. 2 movie. I don't know if they did. They obviously will because the first one was so successful. They basically have to do a second one now, which they absolutely will. But I thought the first one was crap. Not terrible. It's probably not even bottom 10 movies this year, but I still just thought it was a shit movie. Chris Pratt is a cool dude in person, says Georgia Diving Recovery. Yeah, I'm sure he is. I've seen some interviews with him, and he's actually a likable celebrity that doesn't stick his nose into issues that people don't want to hear him on. Typhon, congrats on 50k subs, Despot. Thank you very much, man. I appreciate it. And Georgia Diving Recovery, I'm a new sub. Well, welcome to the channel, Georgia Diving Recovery. Zakum says, the three body problem is about how femininity dooms the human race. Yes. Yes. Exactly. That is exactly right. So you're talking about the basically you've got the Chinese guy who is the wall watcher, I think, if I remember correctly, the wall gazer or wall watcher. I can't quite remember. It's been years since I read those books. But it's his job to be the basically the measure of last resort. I don't want to spoil the book for anyone. But then that job goes to a woman, and you see what happens. Even the aliens know what to do when it goes to a woman, right? I'm not going to spoil it for anyone, but my man here, Zakem, knows what he's talking about. Exactly. The book is about how placing large amounts of power in the hands of women is a bad idea, right? It's going to doom civilization. Don't do it. All right. Pietro Smoothie, I can't wait to see the Woke Awards. Also, what are your thoughts about cartoons with queer characters? I tried to watch The Owl House, but I wanted to scrape my eyes out. I haven't seen The Owl House, and I don't watch modern cartoons, to be honest. I tried to watch Rick and Morty. The problem I found with Rick and Morty wasn't that it was bad. It wasn't bad. It's just that it was very mid. I couldn't really get into it. I mean, I loved Futurama and The Simpsons back in the day, but I don't mind queer characters in cartoons if that's what they want to do. If they want to make a show for queers or have a queer show, it's fine. Go do it. Just don't make Luke Skywalker gay. Have your own content where you've got your own gay, queer, LGBTQ plus X2 minus sign characters. That's fine. I have no problem with that, but just don't shove it down every single franchise you can get your filthy hands on. Enclave Man. Hey man, I've been watching your videos for a while, but this is my first stream. May I make a suggestion for a future video? Of course, anybody can make a suggestion for a future video. Billy Badass, the Joker movie is incredibly absurd and redundant. I mean, are you referring to the Joaquin Phoenix movie? All right. Ever since I soaked my brain in LSD, I can't do fiction anymore. I either watch people ripping on bad shit or war documentaries. Interesting. I mean, I used to be interested in the effects of drugs. I mean, I've had many interests in my life, but man, I don't know if I would do anything as hard as LSD. It's just that, like, would it do anything to your brain to mess you up permanently? I don't know. Interesting question, but I find that fascinating that you took LSD and it changed your brain permanently, but in a way that it changed your tastes. It's interesting. Have you seen Five Nights at Freddy's? No, I haven't seen that. Okay. Nolleaf Gaming says the new Joker movie was a great movie. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with the next one. Apparently, the next one is a musical, so they've got Lady Gaga in with Joaquin Phoenix, and they're going to do a musical. Interesting. I'll be really interested to see how that goes. It's certainly something very different, which I like, rather than just fuck it, man in cape, Joker. Oh, superhero origin story, copy paste, copy paste, copy paste, Blue Beetle, basically. Rather than that shite, they're actually trying to do something different. So I don't even mind the fact that the next Joker movie is a musical. If it's different and it works, that's great. I like seeing a bit of risk being taken. So here's so this is Enclave here. Here's my suggestion. There is a woke DLC sized mod being made for Fallout New Vegas called Fallout Ashfall that has a Tumblr blog and everything. Okay. Soapy Chan says, don't be like, hey, look, we have a queer character. Look. Yeah, the virtue signal is just intolerable. It's just, it's unpleasant and horrifying to watch. So, Rob Neath, Gaga has some good classical love songs. I never listened to Lady Gaga. I do remember when she broke onto the scene. It was when she came out with Poker Face. You could not get away from that song. This was when I was in university. Poker Face came out, and it was everywhere. Jesus, that song just took over the world. Couldn't get away from it, and I didn't like it, and I have never listened to any of her music, so I don't know if she's any good or not. She is a very good singer, and she's a talented musician, and she's a good actress. She's actually one of those singers, one of those musicians that actually has acting ability. I'm sort of thinking when Lizzo decided to get into acting and she was in The Mandalorian season 3, was it because maybe one of her R-slickers in her entourage turned around to her and says, oh, well, if Lady Gaga can do it, you can do it, Lizzo, because you're just the best. You're amazing. Here, let me insert my tongue into your fecal tract a little further. Was that what was going on there? Whereby her hangers-on had her convinced that she could break into acting? Because Lady Gaga is a genuinely talented actress. If you look at her in A Star Is Born, she's really good. But my God, Lizzo she's got like anti-talent. She's one of the worst actresses I've ever seen. Her scenes in Mando season 3 were just hilariously bad. It's going to be funny. I'm definitely going to nominate her for worst actress for Worst of Woke Awards. Fuck me, she's awful. Rob Nath, Poker Face is a completely different style. The songs were attached to a movie with the guy from Hangover. Yeah, the guy from Hangover, can't remember his name right now, but yeah, he was that was a pretty good movie. My favorite movie from him is The Place Beyond the Pines. That's a brilliant movie. What is that guy's name? Bradley Cooper. God, I'm shite with names on live stream. But yeah, Bradley Cooper. Place Beyond the Pines, by the way. Great movie. Recommended if you haven't seen it. He was in that movie with Lady Gaga. That was a really good movie. They had good on-screen chemistry too. They had really good chemistry. Even better than Lizzo and Jack Black's chemistry in Mando season 3. Jesus Christ, that was awful. All right, so Billy Badass says there were some really tired tropes in that movie, like him getting beat up in the beginning, which led to him getting fired, which led to his depression. It's very formulaic. It was kind of formulaic. I'm not going to deny it was formulaic, but it's like the fourth iteration or the fifth iteration of A Star Is Born. So, I mean, if it's the third or fourth remake of the same movie, it's bound to have those tropes in it. It's not a great movie, and you're right, it does have some tired tropes, but it's just a nice kind of touching movie that certainly women would like. I wouldn't go out of my way to recommend it, and there are things wrong with it, but the acting I thought was very good. But yeah, it's very soppy and over the top. Like at the end where she does the big ballad in memory of her lost husband. Like, oh fuck off! That's just sentimental as shite. Way too sappy for me. Remember when I was in the cinema, the girl in front of me was crying her eyes out during that scene, and I just thought it was cringe. So BDFS Minotaur, how long is it? The stream's been going for 2 hours and 15 minutes. Let's see what else. Check out Sexy Beast. That's a great film. I've heard Sexy Beast is a great film, but I haven't had the chance to watch it. So I might, or else I just forgot about it. So I'll definitely check that one out at some stage. All right. So I've talked a little bit about Saw 10. I do recommend watching it, and I don't want to spoil anything, but one thing I loved about it was the characterization. One of the problems with the lesser Saw movies, so this is the 10th one, and I have seen a few of them, and the problems with the lesser ones is that there's just not enough characterization. It starts, and then everybody is in a room and they've got buckets on their heads and they start getting tortured, and the next thing the Jigsaw's voice comes on, but there's no real characterization there. One thing I really loved about Saw 10, they had really good characterization on there, which I really enjoyed. All right, so I'm going to be talking a bit about Death Note now. Death Note 2017. So let me give you a little bit of context here. So this is a Netflix live adaptation, live action adaptation of Death Note. It has William Dafoe as Ryuk, the Death Note monster, and he's literally the only name in it. The rest are basically no names. Shea Wiggum's in it as well. He's kind of a half name actor, and it's awful. Death Note was shite. Now, a lot of people do like the Death Note anime. I haven't seen it yet. I'm looking forward to watching it because I do actually mention it on my Halloween video that I'm working on at the minute. But I haven't yet watched the anime. But this live action was awful. Really terrible. So it had a bunch of things wrong with it. I'll start with some of the redeeming features. So it had some very good gore, some very fun violence, kind of like Final Destiny type violence in the first act. That was kind of fun. And there's a mass suicide scene, which is actually really funny to look at. It. I think it's not meant to be funny. It's meant to be really serious, but it is laugh out loud hilarious because these FBI agents all get together and they just walk off a building, and it's just really funny to watch. Really funny. And it starts going downhill fast. So the first act is actually okay. It's okay, but it starts going downhill really fast, and then it just falls off a cliff in the third act. So the basically the Death Note keeper, the guy that finds the Death Note, that actor's terrible, by the way. The wee kid who played Light, he's awful. And I've not seen him in anything since, and no wonder because he was shite. No screen presence, no charisma, pretty bad actor, just crap. And he finds the note, he finds the Death Note, and starts, killing people. But he's an unbelievably stupid character. There's an incident. There's, for example, his girlfriend kills all these FBI agents, and he doesn't figure this out straight away. Like he thinks that it was Ryuk, I think, something like that. And he doesn't figure out it's his girlfriend, even though his girlfriend was torturing him to do it. Oh, you got to kill these people. They're trying to come after us. And he doesn't figure out until the end that it was her that did it. Like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, is he really that stupid? Just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. That you would expect me to believe that he doesn't know that she's the one that's doing this. So that was really fucking dumb. But I will say, though, it's almost worth watching the movie just to see William Dafoe's performance as Ryuk. He's brilliant. He's so good in it. His voice, his laugh, his posture, the the costume, like the creature design for him was excellent. So the creature design for Ryuk and William Defoe's performance, those were the two things that were brilliant. He deserved a far better movie for his performance as Ryuk than what we got. That movie stank, but William Defoe was excellent in it. Absolutely fantastic. He did a wonderful job. Really good. Um, so Anom says that Death Note live action was the worst adaptation I ever seen. Was a huge fan of Death Note and had to stop watching halfway through. They castrated Ryuk too, made him a complete laughing stock. I mean, like I said, I haven't seen the anime. I'm looking forward to watching it because there were some really interesting ideas that I saw from that movie, which they didn't do anything with. But and I thought Rake was a really cool character. William Defoe does a great job. I don't know how much they butchered him from the source material, but man, that movie stank. Billy Badass, I think the movie's lame because I've seen it before. Yeah, it is. It's a lame movie. It's crap. Edisto or Bust says Defoe is always worth watching. Yeah, he absolutely is. He's a terrific actor. He's brilliant in American Psycho, great in Spider-Man, and superb in Death Note, even though it's a terrible movie. Solomon Richards, Oliver Stone's criminally underrated masterpiece, Talk Radio from 1988, would be right up your alley. Thanks very much for the recommendation, man. I'll check that out. So, talking a little bit more about Death Note. So, yeah, the main actor really crap. No screen presence or charisma. He's very drab, and he has a very limited range, which is a terrible choice of actor for this role. He's supposed to go through this massive emotional arc. He's supposed to display a huge range of emotions as he goes from just this geek kid to essentially a murderer, and he's an existential fear for his life. And the actor just couldn't portray it. He just didn't have the range to portray that. It was really, really bad casting. And the kid didn't look right either. He just doesn't have the presence. You know, some actors, they just don't have any screen presence. And the last thing you want to do is to take an actor like that and put them in the lead of a movie. He sucked. He really sucked. The girl who played his girlfriend was decent though. She was quite good, but he was terrible. And there was no chemistry between them. So there were scenes, excuse me, there were scenes where it's basically a sex scene. It's very PG-13. It's very light. It's like he's kissing her torso, but she's got her bra on, and then just skips ahead to the next scene. And I'm watching this thinking, there's no way that a hot cheerleader is going to fall for this wee dweeb. And there's no chemistry between the two actors. And the movie has not given me a reason to believe that she would want to have sex with this wee geek. I just couldn't believe it at all. I mean, there's kind of a suggestion that she gets turned on by the murders they're committing. She gets turned on by the Death Note, and the actress portrays that quite well. But the movie fails to establish sexual chemistry between them. So when they do start having sex and kissing and things, I just don't buy into it. I don't buy into it at all. And it creates this kind of emotional uncanny valley. And that's what I call that. When the movie wants you to accept the characters are feeling these emotions, but you can't accept it because it's not properly depicted. It's the emotionally uncanny valley. And that's what I was getting from Death Note. No chemistry between the two leads at all. It stank. All right. And it had an awful ending. The ending had a very convoluted plot twist that was just an absolute mess. And they decided to go with sequel bait rather than really address the interesting questions and get to the lore of what the Death Note is and what Ryuk is. They decided to just to leave it hanging in the air, leave it all as just cliffhangers, and they did this disgusting sequel bait ending. It was awful. Fucking terrible ending. I hate that. Just make your movie, make it good from start to finish. No cliffhangers, no sequel bait. Just make a good movie. Not everything needs to have be an 18 movie cinematic franchise. Terrible movie, terrible ending. Seb Talk says, "Hi, great video about the Apple keynote with Mother Earth. Never laughed so much in a long time. When you did the Tim Cook voiceover, keep up the great work." Thanks very much, man. Yeah, that Apple video was just shocking. It was disgusting. It was absolutely disgusting. You've got this company that is, you know, one of the main one of the main consumers of lithium on the planet, and they're virtue signaling about how eco-friendly they are. Like, how fucking dumb do you think people are to buy that? God, it was just disgusting. And I'm really glad that the reaction to that video was so positive, like 99% like ratio. Nobody was buying that. Absolutely, it was absolutely nobody was buying the shit that Apple was selling. Even the Apple fanboys on Apple websites were saying, "No, we're not buying this. This is just a dud." And that was from AppleInsider.com. They called it a complete dud. That's a quote. All right, so getting back to Death Note, uh, so let's see here. There were plot holes. They introduced an interesting story thread with Ryuk telling Light that no one had guessed his name. So Light says to Ryuk, "Oh, I'm gonna put your name in the Death Note and I'll kill you." And Ryuk says, "Yeah, well, the closest anyone has ever come to guessing my name is 2 letters. No one has ever gotten more than 2 letters of my name." And they're introducing a plot thread of a kind of battle going on between Ryuk and Light, and then they abandon it. They don't do anything with it. Ryuk is a massively underdeveloped character in that movie. I wanted a lot more of him. I wanted to see a lot more of William Dafoe playing Ryuk and a lot less of the kid playing Light because he was shit. And I wanted to know a lot more about the Death Note. The Death Note is a character. I was talking about this earlier in the stream. Objects, locations, abstracts, they can be characters. So I presume that in the anime, the Death Note itself is a character and it's treated as such, but in the movie it's not. It's just thought of as an object, and they missed the point. They absolutely missed the point. You've got to have strong characterization of Ryuk and the Death Note together, and Light comes into that, and instead they fronted it entirely with this crappy wee actor playing Light, and the Death Note was really just an instrument of murder for him, really just an instrument of his will, and Ryuk was there at the side. It was terrible, and there's I know anime fans take it really hard when they have to look at shitty adaptations of stuff that they like. That was a big thing with Cowboy Bebop. And the only people who didn't like One Piece I noticed were anime fans. They were One Piece anime fans that felt that the live action just didn't really do the anime justice. But I mean, there's only so much you can do with live action, and there's only so much you can adapt. So I think One Piece was great, but yeah, the Death Note is another great example of a live action anime adaptation, which was just awful. All right, so I'll head over to the chat here. Um, Solomon Richards, are you a fan of really old movies? Depends what you mean by really old. If you're talking 30s, 40s, and 50s, no, don't watch many movies that old. I love Clint Eastwood spaghetti. I love the spaghetti westerns. I love Clint Eastwood westerns, and I mean, my movie knowledge starts kind of, the first decade that I've seen a lot of movies from would probably be the 70s. I don't watch a lot of movies prior to the 70s. I mean, I have seen quite a few of them, but it's not something that I would do regularly. And I would say my favorite decade for movies is the 90s, but that's my favorite decade for culture generally. I think the 90s had the best music and it had the best movies. I mean, just if I type 90s movies, oh, hold on. Let's have a look here. 90s movies. So it's incredible when you compare it to the shite that we get today. Let's have a look here. So Silence of the Lambs, the original Scream movie, Pulp Fiction, Fight Club. There's actually quite a lot of shite here as well. I mean, that's true of every decade. Casino's decent. Don't think it's one of his better movies, but it is decent. Titanic's a quality movie. I don't care what anyone says. Titanic is good. Wayne's World, Starship Troopers, Blade. It just goes on and on and on. The Matrix. Matilda's a fun movie. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. It's the list of truly great 90s movies just goes on and on and on and on. Good Will Hunting, Jurassic Park, The Lion King. There's no end to it. 90s, I think, is the best decade for movies. And I know there's great movies in the 80s as well and the 70s, but for me, it's got to be the 90s. And the 70s was very grim as well. You had movies like Dog Day Afternoon is a fucking brilliant movie. Watched that recently. But it's also very characteristic of that very gritty, down-to-earth, depressing 70s movie. And Star Wars, for example, was a reaction against that, where George Lucas wanted to bring a lot of optimism back in the movies. Then 80s, you had all that action shit, and that carried on over to the 90s. But for me, yeah, the 90s is the greatest decade for music and movies. Noel Gallagher, a great quote from Noel Gallagher that I love is the 90s was the last great decade, which I agree with. Solomon Richards says it's Willem Dafoe, not William. Yeah, I seen it spelled Willem, and I was wondering, is it pronounced Willem Dafoe or is it pronounced William Dafoe? So I guess it's I guess it's Willem Dafoe. So thanks very much, Solomon Richards, for the correction. Despot, have you watched Legend of 1900? Says Rob Neath. I have not. I don't know what Legend of 1900 is. Uh, BDFS Minotaur, why are so many random messages disappearing? I don't know. I'm just on StreamYard, so I'm not looking at the YouTube chat, so I don't know. Edisto or bust. 90s was great in almost every aspect. Yeah, I mean, even if you look at Candace Owens, she's on the Daily Wire, and she does a political podcast on there, and she's mentioned this. She said the 90s. She feels that it was a time that had a great deal of harmony in terms of race relations. And I know there were the riots, the LA riots in the early 90s, but generally speaking, that you didn't have all of from her perspective, like she's a Black American, she was saying that you didn't have all of the personal acrimony and the really horrible acidic race relations that you get today. And I'm just quoting her. I don't live in America. I worked there briefly in 2011, but never lived there for any great amount of time. But yes, I mean, it's interesting to think that race relations in the United States were actually far superior 30 years ago, 25 years ago to what they are today. It's really sad, you know. American culture and culture in the West generally has horribly degraded over the past 30 years. And I think we all know that. Even people on the left, I don't think they would necessarily deny that culture has degenerated a great deal, that we've gone from this healthy, family centered society to which was morally centered to whatever the fuck we have now. It's just sad to think about. But that was reflected in the culture as well. The music of the 90s, like Nirvana, Smashing Pumpkins, Radiohead, truly excellent bands. Back, one of the great solo artists of the 90s. Really excellent stuff in the 90s. And then you just look at music today and it's pretty much dead. I'm convinced that popular music is essentially dead. You still get the odd decent artist who's they mostly sound like artists from the past, but and it's not like I'm some old boomer talking here. It's just the culture we have today is so shite compared to what it used to be. And that's, I would say, most people who know anything much about culture from the 80s onward would agree with that statement. Hyper S says Candace Owens is based for the most part. Yeah, I mean, I don't listen to her show a lot because there's so much political stuff on YouTube I like listening to. She's not one of my favorites, but I do listen to her sometimes. Rob Neath, weed was still illegal, which is proven to induce a range of mental illnesses. I don't know anything about. I'm certainly no authority on drugs, but yeah, it was still illegal. But I mean, I'm fairly libertarian as far as drugs are concerned. If it was up to me, I would just legalize all drugs, mostly to get rid of criminal gangs. I think if you were to legalize drugs, you would get rid of you would pull the financial carpet out from under criminal gangs, and it would make it very difficult for them to operate. So I think it's a cost benefit analysis thing. So Pietro Smoosey says, "Hey Despot, I was looking at your channel image and would like to know the reason behind the red hand on the American flag. The red hand is the red hand of Ulster, which is on the Antrim flag, and I think it looks cool. And my name is the Despot of Antrim, so I chose that red hand as the symbol of Antrim, and also because it looks cool. And the upside down black and white American flag was the closest thing I could think of to symbolize tyranny. So that kind of takes care of the despot aspect of the name. So the Despot of Antrim is visually symbolized in my little channel icon. Ever watched With Neil and I, Best British Comedy? No, I've heard about it, but I might check it out. I have heard good things about it. Solomon Richards, I find Whiplash and Arrival so overrated. I actually watched Whiplash 2 weeks ago. I saw it before. I saw it once before, and I rewatched it. And I really like Whiplash for lots of reasons. I don't know how highly rated it is, but I do like Whiplash because it's not that believable. The idea that you could throw chairs and slap drummers in the middle of a practice session and not be out of a job and in a jail cell the next day is absurd. But I understood what the director was getting at. The director, I suppose, was trying to portray the idea of, well, what is the cost of greatness? And I think Whiplash is a very good movie. I think it's a very beautifully filmed movie as well. The acting is excellent from all of the actors in that movie. It's brilliantly cast. The music's terrific. Gets all the fundamentals right, and I absolutely love the ending of Whiplash because it's kind of heartbreaking when you see the last shot of the father watching his son drumming, and there's this great distance between them, and you realize that the father and son have been torn apart by the teacher and his fanatical will to make his musicians great. It's a very interesting ending. There's a lot of mixed messages going on in the ending, but fundamentally, I think it's a very, very sad ending to that movie. But I love Whiplash. I think it's a fantastic movie. Arrival, I would agree. I think it is a bit overrated. Fun movie, but interesting. Very good visuals. I don't think there's that much going on there in terms of a greater thematic or psychological depth. I would say that's true of Whiplash. I think that's not true of Arrival. I think Arrival's not as clever as it lets on. Rob Nath, you say that, but as a child of a drug addict, I can tell you there's a price for legalizing it. Of course, there's a price for legalizing it. I'm sorry to hear your parent was a drug addict, or hopefully was and not still is, but I understand there's a price. There's a price for everything. One of the terrible mistakes that politicians make is they think that they can enact policies without there being a price to that. So we saw that during the COVID lockdowns. They brought in the lockdowns and they forgot there's a price to this. You might save some lives with the lockdowns, but you're also going to end a lot of lives. People will kill themselves because they're trapped at home and they can't leave their house. There will be major riots because you're locking people up at home, and you're going to have a boiling kettle effect where the top's just going to fly off the kettle and there's going to be an explosion. A lot of people aren't going to be able to go out for cancer treatment. So but politicians just completely denied that there was any possible price to be paid for lockdowns, and their attitude was, oh, well, even if it saves one life, and it's like, yeah, well, it might save one life, or it might save 100 lives, or 1,000 lives, but it might also kill 10,000 people. You're not thinking about this. There's Thomas Sowell. I've read a lot of Thomas Sowell, and this is one of the things that he emphasizes in his political philosophy. Every single policy has a cost. So I'm aware that if you legalize drugs, there is a cost to that. I'm well aware of that, but I'm weighing that cost against the benefit of getting rid of criminal gangs that absolutely plague every single major city in the Western world, and pretty much every town of any size, any big size, even like mid-sized towns in the United States. They've all got these drug gangs present in them. Like over 1,000 towns in the United States, there's a MS-13 or other big drug gangs, big drug cartels are present in those towns. But if you were to legalize this stuff, you could get rid of them. So there's a benefit there. But yes, I understand there is a cost to legalizing it. I think, though, you could couple the legalization with a public campaign to try to encourage people to stop doing it the same way we did with smoking. Okay, so a guy under a bridge gave me $5. Thank you very much, a guy under a bridge. Fletcher needs to be a mandatory professor in modern universities. Also nice face paint. Thank you very much for the face paint comment. And Fletcher would be a far more beneficial professor to the vast majority of college students today than the Marxist maniacs that are turning these students into lunatics. The shit that I've seen recently, like some of the videos I've seen during this whole Israel-Palestine, the recent flare-up, like it's crazy. It's crazy what some of these college kids are doing. Marty 26, they knew the destruction was the point. I mean, that's true. They wanted to see how far they could push it. Like how much will the population be willing to suffer through? Because obviously this is what they want permanently. They want to turn us all into serfs, but it was a test. They wanted to see, well, how far can we push them realistically? So I would agree with that. In 0 lives were saved by lockdowns. People need to build natural. I mean, I'm no scientist, but I would tend to agree with that. I think there's everyone I know, like 100% of the people I know got COVID. And I got COVID, and I was very, very sick when I got COVID. Lockdowns didn't help at all. Everybody's going to get it eventually, and that's just it. You're just going to have to build the natural immunity. You can't run away from a disease. That's stupid. So, yeah, and I think that's one thing we learned during the whole COVID-19. I was just disgusting the way free speech was shut down and people couldn't stand up against all of the lies that were being put out about the lockdowns and the vaccine and all the rest of it. It was wrong. But to be fair, I think society generally has realized that a lot of mistakes were made during COVID, and that all that stuff was wrong. So, Hyper S, Despot of Antrim, in your opinion, is it moral for a state to murder 10 people to save 100 people? Well, I was thinking about this a lot, and I was thinking about this in relation to the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, because I went to see Oppenheimer and I read about 2/3 of the book that's based on. It's a massive book. It's a very well researched book. It's called American Prometheus. Really good book. And no, it isn't. The bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki was evil and immoral and wrong. Now, the argument that the Americans would make is, oh, well, if we didn't bomb them, well, then we would have had to invade. We would have had to do a ground invasion. Fine, do a ground invasion. Yeah, but we'll lose 200,000 soldiers. Okay. If you need to lose 200,000 soldiers, then that's just the price you have to pay. You don't get to murder 100,000 civilians to save the lives of 200,000 men in arms. Like, that's my attitude to it. I don't think you can ever justify the deliberate destruction of civilian life. I mean, if it was like existential, if it was you can destroy one city or the whole planet blows up, of course you have to destroy the fucking city. But you cannot trade civilian lives for military lives. I don't think that's acceptable. And when you begin to give the state permission to murder people, they will take it for granted that that permission is permanent, and they will continue to murder people, and they will become tyrannical. So it won't stop at 10 people. They'll kill 10 people to save 100, but then they'll keep killing people, and it will eventually pile up into the millions. Don't let the state start killing people, because when you do, they'll start opening gulags. Soupy Chan, the US feels like a battlefield to me as a German. I mean, same for me. I live in South Korea, so I'm very detached to my everyday life from all of this stuff. But it also gives me the ability to look in from an outside perspective, and it's just crazy what's going on. And I can also contrast it to the relatively healthy everyday society that South Koreans live in. And I sort of think, well, why do we need all this LGBT shite and all this woke nonsense? They don't have any of it here in South Korea, and South Korea gets on perfectly well without any of it, and it's a perfectly modern, civilized society, and does not require a month out of the year for us to celebrate anal sex. So, yeah, it's good to be able to see that contrast. And yeah, if you're a German as well, you just looking at America thinking, like, what the fuck is going on here? Why is your entire bald head not painted? That would look cool. Yeah, well, to be fair, we kind of ran out of face paint. So we did a practice session, and my wife did the practice. And then after, like, I'm wearing a lot of paint right now. We were almost out of paint, so we couldn't get the whole head, unfortunately, but it still looks pretty cool. Pietro Smusi, your head is shinier than Hollywood's activist future. Thanks very much, man. You can't beat the cue ball. Rob Neath, understood, but drug addicts are more dangerous than gangsters by a long shot. I wouldn't know, Rob Neath. I would need to look into a lot of the data on it. I'm sure they're very dangerous, and you certainly wouldn't want a nation of drug addicts. I'm just saying, if they were legalized, the goal wouldn't be to take control of the drug trade. It would be to regulate it, and to get rid of the criminal gangs, and to slowly eradicate the use of drugs, or to at least reduce it as much as possible by controlling it. That would be the idea behind legalization. Though I don't deny that addicts would certainly be very dangerous and would need to be kept a close eye on. But an invasion of Japan would have meant the extermination of the Japanese. I've heard that. I don't buy that. I don't, because the number of Japanese that were surrendering was increasing massively over the course of the war. So the closer the Americans got to Japan, in fact, thousands of Japanese soldiers were surrendering in the last major battles prior to the use of the bomb. Thousands of Japanese soldiers, I think maybe even hundreds of thousands of Japanese soldiers, surrendered to the Soviet army. And when the Soviet army invaded Korea, bear in mind the Japanese thought of Korea as part of Japan because they had colonized it, and there were millions of Japanese people living in Korea as colonists and in Manchuria. They didn't kill themselves. There was no great Banzai suicide charge against the Soviets. So there's no reason to suspect that would have been true in Japan. The Japanese knew that the war was over. If honestly, this is what would have happened if they hadn't dropped the bomb. The Soviets would have invaded, and the Japanese would have immediately surrendered, because the alternative would have been a Soviet invasion of Honshu and the other big islands in Japan, and they wouldn't have wanted that. So they would have surrendered to the States. I don't think the bomb is necessary. The Soviet invasion is really what got this, what encouraged the Japanese to surrender, not the bomb. The firebombing of Tokyo was more destructive than either of the bombs, and that didn't get them to surrender. So no, I don't think that I don't think that there's an argument for the bomb as anything other than an act of destructive evil. I understand the rationale behind it. I understand why they used it, but I don't agree with it, and I think it was evil. Marty 26, locking people down but allowing them to enter the country from areas of high infection because let's not be racist. Yeah, lock people down in their house but still let in 1 million people from, the third world. Yeah, that makes sense. What is the second movie hoster behind you? The movie hoster behind me is The Incredibles. So I've got The Empire Strikes Back, The Incredibles, and Back to the Future. And I have those 3 movies up because those are 3 perfect movies, basically. So The Empire Strikes Back is a perfect movie. The Incredibles has a couple of very, very minor, very tiny things wrong with it, but they're so minor it may as well be a perfect movie. And Back to the Future, perfect. And yes, I know the time travel mechanics in Back to the Future don't make sense, but I think that's part of the satire of it. Back to the Future, the name itself satirizes the idea of time travel. So the fact that the time travel mechanics don't make sense is kind of part of it. Back to the Future is a perfect movie. So that's why I have those 3 posters, because they're 3 perfect movies, and they're 3 of my favorite movies. Particularly Back to the Future and Empire Strikes Back. Fucking love those movies. BDFS Minotaur said, anime is a prime example of why 2 nukes just wasn't enough. I have to say that is funny. We got the culture that I loved from Japan, but I would have preferred not to have the nukes. Yeah, well, war's bad. Nukes get dropped. I mean, I'm talking about it from a purely moral and philosophical perspective. I don't think you could realistically have expected the Americans not to have dropped the bomb. Of course, they were going to drop the bomb. Rob Neath, woke is just an extension of feminism. The goal isn't promoting diversity. It's about vilifying merit and sanity. That's part of it, certainly. Vilifying merit and sanity and demoralizing the population. Demoralize, divide, conquer, and rule. But I would say that woke, I've been thinking a lot about this. I think woke is a combination of about 5 different isms. So it's a combination of casteism, Marxism, feminism, sexual identitarianism, and something else. I can't remember all 5, but it's just this horrible meeting point of all of the worst, most toxic ideologies that humanity has ever conceived of. It's one of the worst ideas that has ever been conceived of is woke. It's just an absolute horror show. So it's because LGBT, a guy under a bridge, it's because LGBT and these other political activist groups have an ideology that can only exist when most of the activists live with their parents and get money from the government from being oppressed. I mean, these are certainly luxury beliefs that a lot of these people have. A perfect example of it is mass immigration. It's a luxury belief. Like, it's okay for you to talk about how wonderful mass immigration is and how much you support refugees because you don't live in those border towns. You don't live next to a hotel with 1,000 Arab men in it. Your daughter doesn't have to walk past a hotel with hundreds of guys from Africa in their 20s and 30s who are harassing schoolgirls on their way to school. Like, that's not your kids that are walking past that. So you have the luxury of saying how wonderful you are for support, for basically turning your turning your country into a refuge for any young, basically man who has enough money to make it to Europe on the boats. Yeah, perfect example of luxury beliefs. And Nuclear Bomb says, Despot, what do you think will be the long term solution for the declining birth rates around the world? It's a very good question. I mean, there would need to be a lot of a large variety of solutions. Ultimately, governments need to abandon the idea that this is a problem that can be solved with immigration. It can't, because, and a lot of you will be shocked to hear this, immigrants age, they also get old and need to retire. And as it turns out, a 35-year-old Somalian man is not really a particularly good substitute for a one-day-old baby. So no, you can't you can't improve your birth rate or deal with the problem of population decline by importing the population of uh, Sudan. You actually have to start having babies. So we basically need to completely dispense with all of the sexual identitarian nonsense. The alphabet crowd, we're not. They can go and live their own lives and do what they want to do, but we're no longer going to send the message that sterile lifestyles should be celebrated. We must build societies that are family centric, which celebrate families and which support families. That's what we need to do. Now, that's just for starters. And things like if you have 3 kids, you don't pay tax. Right? If you're a married couple and you have 3 kids, you don't pay tax. Like things like that. We need extreme solutions for this because it's going to become a very big problem if we don't come up with extreme solutions. We need to encourage people not just to get married and have kids, but to get married and have 3 or 4 or 5 kids. It's a serious problem. It really is. And governments really need to act on it. And it's almost like if I were to get up and suggest this in mainstream British politics, I'd be called a racist and a bigot and a Nazi and a nationalist and all the other ists and isms and phobes. But it's ridiculous just for wanting to try to create a family centered society that encourages the rearing of healthy children. You'll be called all these names. Soupy Chain, I don't agree with every one of your opinions on politics and stuff, and certainly not with many from your audience. But I like that you're very analytical and as far as possible, even when I think. Well, no one's going to agree with me on everything, and I'm not going to agree with you on everything. But at least I'm open to the idea of discussing ideas with someone who is of a different opinion, and as long as there's a decent amount of crossover, as long as we're not completely opposed, we can at least have a conversation about how we might improve things and improve society and the like. Okay, NIMBYs. Yeah, NIMBYs are a big problem in the UK as well. They'll say things like, "Oh, we need more housing," and then they'll want to build a town and they'll want to build houses in some time, but then the people living there are like, "Oh no, you can't build houses over here," and that's a big problem in the UK because there's not as much land as there is in a place like the United States, which has infinite land. Rob Neath, why assume that the population should be kept up? Good point. Adam, it's funny when you look at the demographic area of politicians in the UK that support mass yeah. I mean, it's the same with those celebrities. Those celebrities that talk about how Trump's wall was evil, they all live in walled off estates with acreage laws. Acreage laws state that a domicile, a home, needs to be built on a certain number of acres. Basically, in order to live in our area, you must be a millionaire by law. That is literally a law that they support. And then they'll say things like, "Oh, by the way, there shouldn't be a border." The hypocrisy of these Hollywood wankers is absolutely astounding. It's incredible, absolutely incredible. All right, guys. So I think I'm going to round it up. I'll just round up the chat there. So thank you to everybody who tuned in. Hold on, Soapy Chan just put in a comment. True, lots of discussions get toxic really quick, and I have to admit that I often make it toxic too, and try to avoid that now. I mean, I get all sorts of negative comments. I don't usually respond to them because I'm not going to respond to positive comments. Why respond to negative comments? But I do appreciate people of different perspectives coming in and giving their thoughts, even if I disagree with them. It's very important because I wouldn't want to agree with someone on 100% of things. Because why would you want to just be a clone of somebody else in terms of your thinking and your mind? You should try to develop your own thoughts and your own independent ideas. All right, so. Yeah, Rob Neath, appreciate the stream. Thank you very much for hanging in, Rob Neath, and listening to the stream. Really appreciate it. And yeah, Ed Deasto or Bust as well hung in there. So thank you. And yeah, happy Halloween to everybody. A guy under a bridge gave me $5. I get a chuckle when pro-immigration folks argue that because a single square acre of land has gone untarnished, there's room for more folks. I was seeing those photos on Twitter. It was leftists posting like photos of farmland in England with the quotation "we're full," as if they're making fun of the idea that England is full because most of it is, farmland. Their argument being that we should just house the entire world in fields in England. Let's just keep building and building and building until England is one gigantic, hideous, concrete urban nightmarescape with the population of the third world living there. Until we have that, until every single square inch of the country has a Somalian in it, you cannot be against immigration. Basically, that's their argument. But thank you very much for the $5, Guy Under a Bridge. And everybody else who listened and who hung in with the chat, thank you very much. Happy Halloween. Now go watch some fun, scary movies or go out, get drunk, do whatever it is you do to enjoy Halloween, and have a great day.